From the George McCoy at Warren Allen Sports Desk, a Sports Center update on 1080 The Fan.
Jeff Rust with your Sports Center update. First on The Fan, late last night, ESPN Shams Charania reported the Trailblazers sending guard Anthony Simons and 2 second-round picks to the Celtics for point guard Drew Holiday. Portland originally acquired Holiday from Milwaukee in the Damian Lillard trade, but he never donned a Blazers uniform before being sent to Boston. The 35-year-old is owed about $67 million over the next 2 seasons and has a $37.2 million player option for the 2027-28 season. Over on the diamond, Cal Raleigh's his hot streak continues. Home runs in 5 of his last 6 games, including his league-leading 32nd in last night's win over the Twins. Same 2 teams back at it again tonight. Luis Castillo starting for Seattle, Chris Paddock for Minnesota. It's a 4:40 first pitch on Root Sports. More sports scores and stories in 30 minutes. I'm Jeff Rust from the George McCoy at Warren Allen Sports Desk. Hurt and missing work, insurance companies acting like jerks. Don't call your mom. Call George McCoy at warrenallen.com.
Do it every morning. Dirt and Spray. Weekdays 6 to 9 a.m. on Portland's sports leader, 1080 The Fan. This is Danny and Dusty.
Meringatang is going to be a thing.
You're not coining anything new.
With Danny Meringue and Dusty, the Fan Man Hera.
I'll throw some monkey sounds in there and call it good.
The old Danny Meringue pie?
Danny and Dusty on the Odyssey app and 1080.
Yeah, this is going to be awesome.
The Fan.
Mamma mia, ciao belly. It is I, Jeff Rust. We are in here. It is a best of edition of Danny and Dusty as the guys are out at the 11th annual Fan Golf Classic at Langdon Farms. We are only at noon, so hopefully Danny is pacing himself and is not yet face down in a bunker next to the 6th hole. But we got a lot to get to today, and I am normally very bad at doing these shows, and I always wind up going over, so we will get right to it. The NBA season right in our rearview mirror. We will talk some NBA draft, which is coming up tomorrow. We'll revisit some stuff from the draft lottery when the Blazers got the worst luck they possibly could. We will eventually switch it up. We'll talk some Senate Bill 110, which appropriates funds for the stadium project at the South Waterfront for Major League Baseball. And if we got time, we will revisit my Mount Rushmore of my favorite movies either taking place in or shot in Oregon. But first, we are going to spend a bunch of time on what was likely the happiest day for Blazers fans in quite some time, the day that the Trailblazers announced they were up for sale.
The Portland Trailblazers will be for sale for the first time since, 1988 when Paul Allen purchased the team?
Yes.
The Portland Trailblazers are for sale. Jody Allen and the Allen Trust have announced that the team will hit the market and they will be for sale. It happened just after Dirt and Sprague signed off. Great timing for those two guys.
Perfect.
That's we talk about bummer Brandon. What a bummer for Brandon and Mr. Andy Dirt Johnson. But shortly after they signed off the airwaves, the Portland Trailblazers announced that they will be going up for sale, and that is huge news here in the city of Portland. It does not happen very often. In fact, this is going to be the third time the franchise is going to be changing hands.
Yeah, this is, I know a lot of people are like, oh, perfect, great, and there's people freaking out about the team's moving to Seattle. We'll dive into everything, but this is probably between what happened to lottery, the news this morning, what may have happened to Jason Tatum, one of the biggest days of like major news I think I've ever covered. Like people, it doesn't happen often. We're talking about the team being sold for the second time.
Yeah, I mean,
this is in its 55-year history. This is the second time it's been sold.
Larry Weinberg to Paul Allen. Paul Allen transferred over his ownership to Jody when he died. That's it since 1970. Since the organization was founded, and in 1970, that has been the ownership. Yeah. Full stop. I mean, there's been a ton of consistency in that regard, and this is a landmark moment for the Portland Trailblazers organization, and there's no way to kind of skirt around it. No. That look, this could be in several people, I myself included. I'm excited for the opportunity of new ownership and what that can bring to the Portland Trailblazers franchise. And I know there's a lot of people partying in the streets. Well, it's a party on Twitter right now. Yeah. It's also
it's
a
scary
very, very, very kind of shaky time for ownership, especially because of the fact that this comes prior to expansion. Now, one thing Adam Silver did say, and those people that are saying that, oh, the team's just going to move to Seattle, one thing that Adam Silver has said is that on the agenda this summer is expansion.
Yes.
And it does appear that expansion in Las Vegas and Seattle are looming, and we all thought that this would not come until expansion happened. And that very well could be, because the ownership groups for Vegas and Seattle are already in place, folks. Yeah. Okay? But we now have some finality to, in 2018, we've been in limbo here in Portland. Mm-hmm. And that has been, it's been a nervous time for Blazer fans, because you just don't know when the sale was going to happen, but you knew it had to happen due to Paul Allen's final wishes.
Yes, and whether it was 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, whatever, we got, was that 2 years ago that we got the statement from the Allen estate about it could take 15 years to unwind all of this, blah, 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 blah. I think that's what it was 2 years ago. This is not done. It's not a coincidence that this is coming on the heels of the Boston Celtics sale. That's what this is waiting for.
$6.1 billion.
Yeah. The Celtics sale set the landmark for what expansion rights are going to be. They're going to be anywhere between $5.5 and $6 billion. So you're looking at an influx of cash from anywhere between $11 and $12 billion just for the rights to buy a franchise between Las Vegas and Seattle. And with that gets the ball going. That's where this all goes. And everybody's like, do you think they're going to sell to Phil Knight? They're going to sell to the highest bidder. That's what they're going to sell to.
And remember, a couple of years ago when that 15-year statement came out, that was on the heels of, the public...
A couple of hit pieces.
Well, and it became public that not just Phil Knight, but Alan Slominski, who is a minority owner of the Los Angeles Dodgers, and a real estate mogul, I believe, down in the LA area, developed USC.
Yeah, he redid the entire area around USC, which turned it from, boy, was it bad, to, whoa.
Yeah, so he's got some cash. Phil Knight obviously has some cash.
Yes.
And is money an object for those guys? I don't know. It's not.
I'll tell you right now, the bid that they made is nowhere close to what it will take to buy this team.
And a lot has changed.
Yeah.
Since then, namely the sale of the Boston Celtics for an exorbitant amount of money. And when you have a record-setting sale price, that raises the valuation of each of the franchises in the league itself. So obviously that number is going to go up. There are so many moving parts to all of this, and they do include a timeline for this. Think of it in these terms. Last year, it was very quick, the sale of the Boston Celtics, in relative terms to a team sale. They went for sale in July. Was it Wyc Grousbeck?
Yeah, the Grousbeck family, yep.
He is going to be the governor of the Boston Celtics through the 2027-2028 season. Yes. Okay? Although ownership will change hands, he will still remain the governor for several years. Now, he can relinquish that governorship of the team prior to that, but these things take a lot of time. Yeah, I would imagine this is going to be 18 to 24 months before we kind of figure out what is actually happening and when we have those changing of hands.
Yeah, there's a lot.
Officially, we'll know before who's going to buy it. But
the email that I got that accompanied the press release, basically like from the Blazers business and PR side of things, was very much like, it's up for sale. Shrug. we don't have much more information beyond that. Like, here's where it is, and here's the statement, and here's everything that's going with this. But yeah, if you're asking me what I think is going to happen, I think you're going to have multiple bidders, because these don't come up for sale very often. That's the whole point. It's an asset that has continued to gain and gain and gain. Everybody keeps saying, "Oh, the bubble's going to burst on this. The bubble's going to burst on this." I've heard that now for 15 years. It hasn't burst any time. Since the time I started covering the team in 2010 till now, the Blazers went from probably a $1.5 billion valuation to, I would imagine they're going to sell for $4 billion. That would probably be what I assume is going to happen with this, is they will sell for $4 billion. So that's a massive, massive return in just 15 years. Beyond that, what does that mean for the city? And I'm already starting to wonder what's going to come out of this, because anytime you sell a team, number one, everybody's worried about the team moving to Seattle. We've already talked about expansion to Seattle and Las Vegas. They're not. I guess there's a less than 1% chance that some billionaire wants to move the team to North Dakota or Montana, but how many top 20 markets don't have a team?
Kansas City,
33rd.
33rd, or top 20?
Yeah.
None?
I mean, it's a very small list.
Or 33rd. Kansas City has an arena.
They have an arena.
That's been sitting just empty. And then you have like Vegas and Seattle, right? And those will come with expansion. I mean, those ones are going to be your expansion cities. Look, the NBA is not in the business of moving teams anymore after what happened with Seattle. And Adam Silver has been very clear about that. And I really do wonder what kind of language is going to be put into any sale agreement, because that will be very important to kind of see.
Baltimore, San Diego. Those are your only two top 20 markets that don't have an NBA team.
Okay. All right. Well, we shall see.
Yeah.
I would be stunned if the NBA was willing to have that happen, especially after expansion is announced.
Yeah, you don't move teams when you're expanding. Now, you might.
I think
you might move a team to the Eastern. I mean, you are going to move a team to the Eastern Conference, but they're not physically moving.
I feel like this is a signal that expansion isn't just like, oh yeah, it's going to happen.
No, it's
like
happening.
It's happening within the next couple of months.
Yeah,
and that is, I think that will calm a lot of the fears. But the fears, they can be real, and it's an uneasy time for anybody. And to sit there and say that it's not going to happen and it would never happen, I'm not going to go down that road, because you never say never.
I'm as close to that as humanly possible.
But at the same time, every signal from the league has been, we don't want to do that, especially in a market that is passionate and sincere with their love for the Portland Trailblazers.
And on that note, even though the Blazers have been a sub 500 team for 4 years now, they have been in the middle of the pack in attendance still.
Yeah.
It's like, this isn't a Tampa Bay, Oakland baseball situation where people talk about apathy towards a team. There's not. It's people are still going to games.
Well, if you are we're going to have a lot on this. We will be joined by Brian Berger, who does Sports Business Radio. Brian used to work for the organization and worked closely with Paul Allen and the Portland Trailblazers. He has had a lot on this on his Twitter feed at SB Radio. He'll join us at 1:15. There's so many arms to this, including, all right, the Blazers are up for sale. What about the Seattle Seahawks? And the Blazers have been pretty clear now. The Seahawks are not for sale, and they don't have to be sold at the same time. So that is something to keep in mind there. There's a lot of consternation amongst Blazer fans that are worried that the team is going to be uprooted, tamp that down. This is an exciting time, though, because 2018, Paul Allen passed away, and we knew that this was going to happen.
Eventually.
Now it's time.
The process has started, and here we go.
All right, there's our opening segment from May 13th. Mark that one down on your calendar. That was the Blazer fans' happiest day in quite some time. We are going to have plenty more from that same day, May 13th, coming up in this show, including next segment, where we wonder how much will the Blazers sell for. That is coming up next on a best of edition of Danny and Dusty here on 1080 The Fan.
Check out the Fan merch
Welcome back to this best of edition of Danny and Dusty. Jeff Rust holding the fort down while the guys are out at Langdon Farms for the 11th annual Fan Golf Classic. We do have a little bit of breaking news from the association. Shams Charania reporting the Pelicans trading C.J. McCollum, Kelly Olynyk, and a future second-round pick to the Wizards for Jordan Poole, Sadiq Bey, and the number 40 overall pick. But we're going to keep things moving here, celebrating the happiest day in Blazers fans' lives for quite some time. The day they announced the team was for sale. Coming up next, discussion on exactly how much the team might go for.
Portland Trailblazers are officially up for sale. Now, there will be no sweetheart of a deal to a local ownership group that may not have the highest bid. And there's a lot of reasons for that, mainly being it is built into the Allen Trust that the money will go to the Paul Allen Foundation. And that money, there's like incentives for having the most money go into that foundation. That is a big kind of pivot point in this potential, or the sale of the Portland Trailblazers, not a potential sale, of the sale of the Portland Trailblazers, that the highest bidder will be rewarded with this team.
Yes, and the initial offer that Phil Knight made was $2 billion, and I think it's going to be double that when it's all said and done.
So if you go back historically, that was 2 years ago, right? So we were 2023. Okay, if you go back to 2014, the Clipper sale to Steve Ballmer, he bought the team for $2 billion. Mm-hmm. The Houston Rockets were sold in 2019 for $2.2 billion. The Brooklyn Nets sold in 2019 as well for $2.35 billion. That puts that, and that's where those numbers kind of, you get that $2 billion. Later in 2023, the Charlotte Hornets were sold for $3 billion.
The Hornets.
Then the Dallas Mavericks in 2023 sold for $3.5 billion. Mm-hmm. This is where you get to, all right, why is this going so far up? Because Dallas, far larger city than Portland is. The Phoenix Suns and Mercury were sold to Matt Ishbia, who at the time everybody was like, that's an overpay, for $4 billion. He wanted a team. He got a team for $500 million more than the Dallas Mavericks were sold for. Fast forward to last summer, the Boston Celtics were sold for $6.1 billion. Now, that's one of the most historic franchises in the NBA, one of the most lucrative franchises in all of professional sports.
And a massive market.
And so that was the market has been set at the tippy top, but you go back and you go, all right, the water has risen for every other franchise sale.
And the thing you also have to take into consideration is the Boston Celtics do not control TD Bank. I believe Ishbia does control the building. Dallas, I believe they control the building, but that arena is old as dirt, and they're trying to build a new arena. And guess what, ladies and gentlemen? The Moda Center is 30 years old next year.
That's going to be an interesting one.
I've got feelers out to figure some stuff out. Remember, there's a 5-year bridge lease. That seems pretty poignant right now, because I think the reason why they don't sign an extended length lease right now is because they had a reeling suspicion of when things were going to come timing-wise. And whoever is going to come in here and buy this team is probably going to want to build a new arena. And this is conjecture amongst other folks that I've talked to already. The timing of this is interesting. We just had news come out of Salem that approved a change in the millionaire tax,
the jock tax
that could help fund a potential baseball team to Portland. If you're the Portland Trailblazers and a new owner wants to build a new building, don't you want to try to get this taken care of before that and jump in line in front of that to potentially have any earmarked funds that could go towards that? Because, look, this is Portland. Public funds aren't going towards a building. We all know that.
Yeah, I'd be interested to know, because I just don't know what specifically those funds are earmarked for, whether and that's something for me to dive into later, because I have not had the time to do that. what that looks like and is it the specifics of what it is earmarked for, that will be interesting.
Because if you're a new owner and you've got one of the older, I believe the Blazers have the 4th or 5th oldest building in the NBA right now. Pretty much everybody has a brand new building.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Seattle has a $1 billion refurbished old building that they'll move into. Vegas has T-Mobile that they'll move into, and they have one that they're planning to build at the north end of the strip for what will be like the NBA Conference Center. I wouldn't be surprised if we see the All-Star Game and every event basically move to Las Vegas permanently, because that's become a gathering spot for basically everyone. Between Chicago and Vegas, I think that's pretty much where they'll set up shop for all their events. But you take a look at just around the NBA, that's going to be very interesting to see how that part of it plays out, because the Blazers do control Moda.
Yeah.
That is, they don't control the land around it because of that 5-year lease and the things that they've done there. I'm trying to get some clarification on exactly how those things are divvied up and broken out, but that's like breaking into Fort Knox.
So the Portland Trailblazers have the 7th oldest arena in the NBA. Madison Square Garden, the Target Center in Minneapolis, the Delta Center in Salt Lake City, the Phoenix Arena, and Rocket Arena in Cleveland.
Mm-hmm. And all of those have all gone on.
And, the United Center as well. They've
all undergone massive renovations. I believe the Blazers are the last arena to undergo massive renovations.
Yeah. So close to the oldest arena in the NBA. Officially the 7th oldest. Opened the same year as the TD Garden, where Boston plays. So,
and MSG's never getting torn down. They're just going to keep renovating it.
Yep. And they had a massive overhaul recently.
Over the last couple of years.
To Madison Square Garden.
Yeah.
So, look, it is an old arena. Owners, they like new fancy things. If you look at it since in the last decade, you've had, with obviously the newest being the Intuit Dome where the Clippers play, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 new arenas in the last decade.
And how many
alone.
of those have new owners?
Kings, new owners. Pistons, no. Bucks, yes. Warriors, yes. Clippers, yes. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. You can connect the dots there.
It's not hard.
No. So that's an interesting move to just think of the timing of everything.
Yes.
One, expansion is going to be happening in the NBA. Adam Silver has said it's on the agenda for this summer. We know that there are 2 arenas and several ownership groups that are ready to pounce and ready to go. And look, teams don't go for sale without having the vultures already circling.
Mm-hmm.
Unless it's the Clippers, where the owner is forced out.
Yeah.
And that is
Phoenix.
That is the only time. Well, yeah, but the same kind of situations, right?
Yeah.
Is that these teams are, and really the Sarver one, he knew he was on the outs, and he was taking some offers, and he knew
he didn't want to, but
no, his hand was forced. Yeah. But the Clippers one was like the Clippers and the Carolina Panthers. Those are the 2 where it was like, those really came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And
I mean, you have to think about the size of this thing. Like the value, even if it not being for sale at the level the Celtics was, at $3.5–4 billion, the pool of people that can pay for that and then run a team is very small.
Mm-hmm.
It's incredibly small, and I'm really interested to see if it's not Phil Knight, who is the person that does it. Because you've heard names like Jeff Bezos trying to get into teams. There was a lot of smoke around him potentially buying the Boston Celtics. There was a lot of smoke around him potentially buying the Washington Commanders because of his investments in the region, both in multimedia and just in the region in general. But you start thinking about the potential buyers in the Northwest region alone, it's a very small list.
But if you have a list, and look, the reality of it is Matt Ishbia is not a Phoenix guy. He bought that team.
No.
Steve Ballmer is not an LA guy.
No.
He bought that team.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You the reality is with the valuation of these franchises, new ownership will not be local. But there are things that you 100% want to have in your owners.
Jeff Russ back here with you on this best of edition of Danny and Dusty. We have a little bit more of slightly breaking news. We'll call it a fracture in the NBA. But coming up next, we're going to keep it more Blazers centric in terms of who you might want to see in a new ownership group for Rip City. But first, here's me with an update.
Now, from the George McCoy at Warren Allen Sports Desk, a Sports Center update on 1080 The Fan.
First on The Fan, late last night, ESPN Shams Charania reporting the Trailblazers sending guard Anthony Simons and 2 second-round picks to the Celtics for point guard Drew Holiday. Portland originally acquired Holiday from Milwaukee in the Damian Lillard trade, but he never donned a Blazers uniform before being sent to Boston. The 35-year-old is owed about $67 million over the next 2 seasons and has a $37.2 million player option for the 2027-28 season. Shams also reporting Blazers forward Matisse Thybulle exercising his $11.5 million option for next season. Shams again reporting the Pelicans trading C.J. McCollum, Kelly Olynyk, and a second-round pick to the Wizards for Jordan Poole, Saddiq Bey, and the number 40 overall pick on Thursday. CJ's on an expiring deal. The Wizards now will have nearly $100 million in cap space in 2026. And on the diamond, Cal Raleigh continued his hot streak. Home runs in 5 of his last 6 games, including his league-leading 32nd in last night's win over the Twins. Same 2 teams back at it again tonight. Luis Castillo on the bump for Seattle. Chris Paddock for Minnesota. 441st pitch on Root Sports. More sports scores and stories in 30 minutes. I'm Jeff Rust from the George McCoy at Warren Allen Sports Desk. Hurt and missing work, insurance companies acting like jerks. Don't call your mom. Call George McCoy at warrenallen.com.
The home of prime time with Isaac and Sue. Weekdays 3 to 7, 1080 The Fan.
Jeff Rush back here with you on this best of edition of Danny and Dusty. They're out on the course at Langdon Farms for the 11th annual Fan Golf Classic. We've been leading off today with what was likely the happiest day in Rip City for many Blazer fans in quite some time, the day the team announced they were up for sale. So far, we have hit, the original announcement and trying to guess how much they will go for. This next segment, who might be up for owning the Trailblazers? Who would you want to see? And could there be somebody locally who might want to take that shot?
This ain't going to happen before next season. It won't happen. I would say the most aggressive timeline is 18 to 24 months on this.
For it to fully transition.
Yeah. We'll know who it's going to be probably by the beginning of the season.
I think it probably goes into the spring, kind of like with the Celtics.
Yeah. Wait, what?
Well,
we knew who was buying it.
There was two different guys it was down to two groups in the very end.
Yeah.
Both local, but
yeah. But this is gonna move fast with all the names that are going to be thrown out there.
Yeah.
I have a feeling that Phil Knight will be involved in some capacity. A group attached to him. He's 87 years old.
Yeah.
Still doing well, moving around, going around, traveling, but. It's going to be him and like Alan Sminsky was the guy who was his partner a couple of years ago. I don't know if that is still going to be the case. Hell, Phil Knight may just say, no, not anymore.
Yeah.
Not anymore. But he did mention it was part of a civic duty the last time, right? And then the Albina project popped up right after that. But in a new owner, what are you looking for?
More money than God.
That's it.
I want my owner to have more money than God.
Mm.
I want them to care. I want them to be invested, but I don't want them to be too invested. And that's the problem, is that more often than not, the people who have the necessary money to do this think they know the right way to do it, and more often than not, they come in and they faceplant. Up and down the board. Doesn't matter what sport it is. How many new owners have come in and just nailed it? Commanders did. But the bar was so freaking low.
Yeah, but they've
nailed it, though.
Man. They've cleared it by miles. No matter who buys this team is going to have that more money than God.
Yeah.
The days of the Brown family, which owns the Bengals, owning a team, or the Davis family owning the Raiders, those are long gone. The money is going to be there. I want somebody that cares about winning and cares about basketball to be the owner.
Yep.
Because they will all have money. The worst thing that you can have as an owner is somebody who looks at it as an investment portfolio tab.
Yep.
And that scares me because Paul Allen cared. And at times, about the middle stage of his ownership, he cared too much.
Yeah.
He cared too much about the team, and he meddled a lot, Ha-Sung Jin. And got in, and then he finally backed away once he saw, hey, the Seahawks, they're playing for a Super Bowl, and I am on the periphery here, but I own this team. And he started to let the front office be
basketball people.
Front office people. And so that, to me, is the most important thing. Because if you get an owner who just is, this is part of my portfolio, I own the team, whatever, I don't care if they win or lose, just show me the check and is the value going up, that would suck.
Yes, and that's the scary proposition, is that, for the most part, the people with that money, that's what their mindset is. And that's why I want somebody, if they're not going to be local, I want somebody at least from the West Coast that understands sports out here, that understands the implication of the Trailblazers out here, that knows the market. Because if you get somebody from outside the market who doesn't understand basketball or doesn't understand the region and the ties that the fan base have to the region, that it can crater very quickly. Very quickly. And that's what scares me. And people can say what they want about Jody Allen, the estate, and all this stuff, and she's terrible, blah, 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 blah. She at least understands that part of it. They have spent money. They have invested in the team. Is it the best? No. Is it the worst? Hell no. And this is not the devil that you know situation for me, but I am leery of somebody coming in with a crap ton of VC money and going, we're going to do this the way we do things in Silicon Valley, and go, we're going to do it in a manner that does not work in sports. And you've seen it happen time after time after time.
I want a Ballmer. Hell, I want an Ishbia, because you can say what you want about Ishbia. Ishbia's tried. And you know what?
I don't want that. I don't want an Ishbia.
I want Ishbia's taking care of the fans.
Yeah, that part of it is great.
Whether it's their TV deal going over the air, whether it is $2 concessions, whether it is making big swings and putting them on the table and saying, yeah, we're going to try, and it backfires, and sometimes it does.
And it might have them in the gutter for 10 years now.
But I want an owner who cares about basketball.
Yeah.
Because I would rather have that, and we can all get pissed off that the moves didn't work, than apathy setting in because nobody's ever going to try.
Yeah.
And it's like, what are we going to do here? You know, like that. Those are the things that I think matter in an owner. And you see it with Josh Harrison in Washington, and there's horror stories, but there's success stories too. And it is not working for Josh Harrison in Philadelphia because he owns the 76ers too. And they take big swings, but they care. And that's what I care about in this. Take care of the fans and really care about the product that is being put out there.
Yeah, no, I in that vein, I agree with you. And look, I'm being picky. I know I am, but that's the whole point. Is like everything that comes along with this. I want an owner that does care, and I want an owner that probably cares too much. But I want an owner that understands basketball, and to let basketball people make basketball decisions, because you've got, everyone talks about Ishbia. The basketball decisions that were made in Dallas were made absent-mindedly of ownership because they have no understanding of basketball.
My fever dream is Mark Cuban is so pissed off at Nico Harrison
That he comes back and
that
buys the
he's
Blazers.
just like, Dirk, let's relocate. Our new favorite team's Portland. And he comes and buys the team. Now that's my I want a unicorn. Give me that unicorn.
I mean,
but I hope he is pissed off to that point that he goes and does it. Final answer.
I would not be against Mark Cuban getting the deal.
Well, yeah, obviously. And that would we'd all of a sudden have a built-in rival, and it'd be the Dallas Mavericks.
Yeah.
It'd be great.
Has anybody ever owned two teams in the same sport?
No, he can't. He would have to fully divest from
because he still
the
owns
Mavericks.
like 21% of the Mavericks.
But
like
do
that.
it. You know what? Sell that 20% and come up to Portland. Huh? He's loved it here. He raves about Portland every time he comes here. I doubt he wants to own a team here, but I'd love it.
Do it.
That's what I want.
Okay, my wheels are spinning now a little too fast.
I know that I knew that was dangerous. I knew I shouldn't have done it because now your tinfoil hat is securely strapped to your head.
Oh, buddy, he's been on for 24 hours now.
He was the first guy that I thought of because it was like
it's-
you want owners that care, and he is like he embodies
And
that.
the likelihood of whoever buys the team probably whoever comes in, it'll be a group. There will probably be somebody who divests from ownership from somewhere else.
Yeah.
To buy into this team.
Yeah. All right. 503-864-6326, the fan text line. New ownership needs to be a fan of the game, not just an investor. Paul Allen, check this box. Yeah. Sometimes a little bit too much. Whoever the new owners, they'll be a-holes because there are no good people at that level of billionaires eligible to buy a sports team. You're replacing one a-hole with another. Wow. Okay. All right. We got that going for us, which is nice. Money, passion, and an ability to let the front office work without being micromanaged.
Yeah. Look,
It sounds like, did you text that?
Yeah. No,
Did you just text that in?
Nope, not me.
You just text that
Whoever
in?
that is,
You just text that in? I think that was you.
that's a very smart individual.
I think that is you. This is a nerve-wracking time for Blazer fans. It's an exciting time as well. The Blazers are for sale. We don't know how quick this is going to move. We don't know the names that are going to be at play. This will be changing. It's going to be a landscape that changes very, very quickly. There are a lot of people that want to in on the ownership of professional sports. These opportunities, they don't come very often. And it may not seem like that, but
they don't. And
it's true.
At that scale, it just doesn't happen.
There's only 30 NBA teams right now.
That would be 32. But even then.
Even that, those are set, pushed off to the side.
Nobody wants to sell.
Yeah. No.
Because they just keep gaining valuation. They keep gaining money.
And that's the scary part, though.
Like Paul Allen bought the team, wasn't it $300 million?
I think it was less than that.
I thought it was like in the 100s.
Yeah.
Like 115.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm thinking a little bit later. I
I
know A-Team sold for $300 million.
Yeah, no, he bought it for $70 million.
Holy crap.
Yeah.
So the estate's going to take a $70 million sale and turn it into a $4 billion sale.
Yeah. Somebody's going to try to spin it as they lost some money.
I don't think you could lose. I don't think the math could math in, like you would have to lose hundreds of millions of dollars a year.
All right.
In order for that to happen. That's insane.
But that's the scary part, though, is that what you just outlined also brings out the people who don't care about sports and just say there's money to be made in sports.
Jeff Rust back here with you on this best of edition of Danny and Dusty. Coming up on the other side of the break, we will wrap up this first full hour from the happiest day in Rip City in quite some time, May 13th. Next segment, Danny's not chasing waterfalls, but he might be chasing a unicorn.
Hello, sports fans, and welcome to
Prime Time with Isaac and
Welcome back into this best of edition of Danny and Dusty. They're all out there getting toasted in more ways than one at Langdon Farms Golf Course for the 11th annual Fan Golf Classic. We're getting ready to wrap up this first hour, celebrating May 13th, the happy day in Rip City where it was announced the Blazers will be going up for sale. Last segment, we talked about potential candidates to buy the team. And coming up here next in this segment, Danny's chasing a unicorn.
You've already tweeted at Mark Cuban. You've already tweeted at, hey, Mark Cuban, want to run a team again? I knew this was going to happen once I said it. Some things I let my intrusive thoughts come out, and I did it because I did it for the people. But now you're going to try to bully Mark Cuban into owning the Blazers, and I'm here for it. I'm here for it. If we can do it, let's do it.
I might send a you up text.
I think everybody should just start. Oh, you know what? Hell, I'll do it. Hey, Mark Cuban, you like Portland? At Mark Cuban. All right. You like Portland?
I like it. I like it.
All right.
Look, I might send him a text.
Ooh, I need to send.
It may stay on red, but
Everybody
take it.
has his number. His number is very accessible. And email address. You can just Google his email address. And he responds to it. That's the crazy thing. Mark Cuban responds to emails. It's weird.
he's just a dude.
He is just a dude. He is just a dude. Oh, got hashtag Rip City in there too.
There you go.
There we go.
I'm babe.
All right. I've done my part. Look, if there's something that is more Portland than crowdsourcing your new ownership, I don't know what.
Right?
All right. Okay. We're trying to get Mark Cuban to own the Blazers. Okay, your text. P1 Lawrence. Hell, why not throw NVIDIA money in there too? He'll be the effer of the FU money guys. Jensen Huang?
Yeah.
NVIDIA owner, went to Aloha High School, Oregon State. I would venture to guess if he cared about sports, Oregon State would not be in the position that they are in athletically right now.
For reference, I believe he's fourth in net worth right now.
He's worth
Fourth or
$100
fifth,
billion.
somewhere around. He's worth the current value. Excuse me, current valuation is $102 billion.
You could buy a team.
And I think he was at like 150 or 160 or something like that, like 5 months ago. NVIDIA took a wee bit of a hit.
Well,
but yeah,
protect some of that money in the NBA.
Yeah, $100 billion. He doesn't have any issues, and that's the thing. Is like you said, if he was a sports motivated human, Oregon State would not be in the position they're in because he could cut off quite a bit of money and not even notice it.
Yeah.
Just think about that for a second. If he cut off a $150 million check to Corvallis, it wouldn't even be a dent. He'd have to do that 10 more times for it to even be a billion.
That's crazy.
And he has 100 more of them.
Yeah. But a lot of these guys, they like their money too.
Look, you don't get rich by spending money.
Yeah. All right. If you are wondering, and I know that some of these texts have come in, again, this means nothing for the Seattle Seahawks right now.
Yes.
Which the Allen estate also owns, nor does it mean anything for the 25% stake that the Allen estate has in the Seattle Sounders. So they are holding on to those for now, but it is known in the will they have to divest from them at some point unless they want to purchase it back.
Yes. And on the Seahawks front, there is a deal worked in within the state that I believe expires at the end of this month. I think it was May 2025 is when if they sold the team before the end of this month, they would owe, it was either 10% or 15% to the state of Washington. So the Seahawks were never going to hit the market regardless until after this month. That was part of, I believe, the lease deal that they struck last time.
All right. So maybe we see something in a month.
Wouldn't surprise me if you started hearing murmurs about the Seahawks being for sale later this year.
Oh.
All right, well, that is going to wrap it up for our number one of this best of edition of Danny and Dusty, as the guys are out there helping you all hit some shots, both figuratively and literally. Coming up next hour, we will keep it some with the Blazers, more still on the sale, and we will also turn our attention to the NBA draft, which, of course, begins tomorrow. The Trailblazers hold the number one pick. Next hour, we will hear from Brian Berger of Sports Business Radio. We'll also hear from Washington Post senior NBA writer Ben Golliver, also Beaverton native. Go Beavs. That is all coming up in hour number 2 on this best of edition of Danny and Dusty.
Uber Eats has deals all
Now, from the George McCoy at Warren Allen Sports Desk, a Sports Center update on 1080 The Fan.
Jeff Rust with your Sports Center update. First on The Fan. Late last night, ESPN Shams Charania reported the Trailblazers sending guard Anthony Simons and 2 second-round picks to the Celtics in exchange for point guard Drew Holiday. Portland originally acquired Holiday from Milwaukee in the Damian Lillard trade, but he never donned a Portland uniform before being sent to Boston. The 35-year-old owed about $67 million over the next 2 seasons. He also has a $37.2 million player option for the 2027-28 season. Shams also reporting Blazers defensive stalwart Matisse Thybulle exercising his $11.5 million option for next season. And more. Shams reporting the Pelicans trading C.J. McCollum, Kelly Olynyk, and a second-round pick to the Wizards for Jordan Poole, Saddiq Bey, and the number 40 overall pick on Thursday. Over on the diamond, Cal Raleigh continues his hot streak. Home runs in 5 of his last 6 games, including his league-leading 32nd in last night's win over the Twins. Same two teams back at it again tonight. Luis Castillo on the bump for Seattle. Chris Paddock for Minnesota. 4:40 first pitch on Root Sports. More sports scores and stories in 30 minutes. I'm Jeff Rust from the George McCoy at Warren Allen Sports Desk. Hurt and missing work. Insurance companies acting like jerks. Don't call your mom. Call George McCoy at warrenallen.com.
More, please. Golf in the Northwest with Jason Swigard is back. Saturdays at 8 a.m. before the Sinner and the Saint on Portland Sports Leader, 1080 The Fan. Danny Meringue.
And then I went to this movie theater. Then I made a noise like this.
Dusty Hera.
Then this was horrible. All the people started getting sick and throwing up all over each other.
I'm beginning to like this kid, Mom.
This is Danny and Dusty on the Odyssey app and Portland's sports leader, 1080 The Fan.
Welcome back. Hour number 2 of a best of edition of Danny and Dusty. Jeff Rust in here holding down the fort while the guys are out there getting toasty, both in the sun and I'm sure with some beverages. Coming up this hour, we're going to keep it fairly Blazer. Well, no, I'm not going to lie to you. We're keeping it Blazers heavy. Coming up next, we'll talk with Brian Berger of Sports Business Radio. He will give his input on the Trailblazers sale. We'll also talk some draft lottery and the upcoming draft, which starts tomorrow. And we'll hear from Ben Golliver later this hour, senior NBA writer from the Washington Post. But first, here we go with our conversation with Brian Berger.
The Portland Trailblazers announced that the team is on the market, looking for new ownership. It'll be only the 4th time ownership has changed hands, or to the 4th person. Larry Weinberg, Paul Allen, to Jody Allen, to insert new owner here.
Indeed.
The wheels are in motion. And to talk about this on the business side of things, we bring in the host of Sports Business Radio at SB Radio on Twitter, Brian Berger, joining us. What's up, man? How you doing?
Good. Thanks for having me on. How are you guys doing?
We're doing fantastic. Look, this is a huge day in the city of Portland, and you not just being on the sports business side of things, but your unique relationship with the organization, too, having worked for the Blazers at one point. This is a massive, massive story here locally. But when you talk about ownership changing, fan bases get excited, but there's also a ton of apprehension in this. For Blazers fan being from Portland and living here, how do you feel about the Blazers going on the market, something that was inevitable once Paul Allen died?
Yeah, I think it's an exciting day. I'll correct you on what you just said. Jody Allen is not the owner. She's the trustee. So when Paul Allen died, in his will, he wanted to have the Trailblazers and eventually the Seahawks sold so that the proceeds from those sales would benefit the Paul G. Allen Foundation that would fund his philanthropic interests, whether it's cancer research or space exploration, the music industry, so many of the things that he was passionate about. So she's been the trustee since he died 7 years ago, but it was in his will that this is what he wanted to have happen. It's actually taken a lot longer than I thought it would, 7 years, because Paul died in 2018. But here we are, and there's so many layers to this because, first of all, this is going to be an auction. So this isn't, hey, we're having a Zillow open house and come look through the house and see what we have here. This is an auction. Allen & Company will run the auction. That means a lot of different things. Number one, it means that the owner's probably going to come from outside of Oregon. Number two, auctions usually drive up a higher price. So I would expect this could land anywhere in the $4 billion to $4.5 billion range. And for reference, the Celtics just sold for $6.1 billion. The other thing that's changed here is when Paul Allen bought the team in 1988, you saw the days of the singular owner. Mm-hmm. And now those days have changed. Now, because these franchises are so expensive, it's typically an ownership group that buys into this, but the main owner, the controlling owner, has to have at least 15% of the team. So when you go sit at the Board of Governors meetings with all the other NBA owners, you have to have at least 15% of the ownership, and the league will only recognize one owner. So you could have 20 people as part of the ownership group. Only one gets to be the Board of Governor and the controlling owner of the team. I know that's a lot to digest, but there's just a lot of layers to this.
Brian, when you look at where this is at right now and kind of the timeline for not only the sale, but when you look at the timeline of kind of what's going on not only in sports but going on locally, what do you kind of make of where this thing is going to go, and based off of expansion in the NBA that's coming very soon and the sale of the Celtics, how much of that do you think kind of fed into the Blazers hitting the market now?
Yeah, I think Jody Allen and Bert Kold have actually timed this pretty perfectly. So the Celtics just sold. You've got two potential expansion franchises coming, which will go for more than what the Blazers will likely sell. So if you're someone who wants to own an NBA team, this is it. The Blazers are your best chance because we don't know of any other teams that may be sold in the future as far as the NBA goes. So I think that will drive up the price too. But I think, like I said, you just saw the Washington Commanders sold. You've seen the Boston Celtics sold. You can't get an NHL team now for less than $1 billion. So these franchise values continue to go up. And I think the other thing that's interesting to point out about Portland is you've got this agreement between the city of Portland and the Trailblazers. And it's a very short-term agreement. It makes the Blazers very portable. And that's good and bad. The bad is if you have an out-of-town buyer and they want to move the team, they've got a decent shot at doing it. The good news is if I'm a new owner of the Blazers, I want to negotiate my own arena lease, or better yet, I want to build a new arena because the Rose Garden / Moda Center is 30 years old. I want a new, more modern arena. So there's a lot of flexibility around what I can do as the new owner.
Brian, kind of following up on that, the lease that you're talking about is the bridge lease, obviously, that they just signed. Was that in the fall, I believe, that they got that officially done, the 5-year bridge lease they're hoping to open up for potential renegotiations, as it were, whether it be building a new building or new ownership. Do you look at what kind of came out of Salem just a month ago and the jock tax and the Blazers looking at that and going, if we're going to sell this team, we need to make sure we get ahead of any potential ownership group that might try to bring in Major League Baseball, because if you're a new owner and you want to come in and you want to build a new stadium, you're going to want to have basically first bite at the apple, as it were, of any potential additional funds that could be made available for a new ownership group?
Maybe. I don't think that plays a huge part in this. I think, again, you're talking about a team that's going to cost probably around $4 billion. If you have that kind of money, you also know that you want to build a new arena. Ideally, you want to have real estate around the arena that you can develop. I don't think you're coming in saying, wow, I just spent all my money on the team, and I'm hoping that the state or city kicks in money to help fund this. I think someone's going to come in and they're going to have the money. They're going to have a clear vision as to what they want to do. And I also think, as a side note, I've said this many times on local radio and on my own show, I don't think Major League Baseball is coming to Portland in my lifetime, and I could give you 3 hours as to why. So I don't think prospective Blazers owner is factoring in anything with Major League Baseball into purchasing the NBA team here in Portland.
You mentioned something that's really interesting, Brian, as we're talking with Brian Berger, SB Radio, Sports Business Radio, at SB Radio on Twitter. You mentioned this will be an auction, and this is kind of a two-pronged question here, is that, one, the auction will be going to the highest bidder, and obviously, how does that change, or does it, any of the vetting that owners have to go through in the purchasing of an NBA team, because you have to jump through a lot of hoops in order to be an NBA owner, and it's vetted by the league through and through.
Yeah, it is vetted by the league through and through. So, there's really two vetters here. One is the league, and the other is going to be Allen and Company. It's really not a lot different than if we went to a high-priced auction and we were sitting in the auction. Before we put down our credit card, so to speak, they want to make sure that we have the funding. We're not bidding on something that we can't pay for. So you've got the league who wants to make sure this is approved by the Board of Governors, the other teams, and you've got Allen and Company who's going to make sure you've got all your funding. There's other layers of vetting too. They want to do background checks on the owners and make sure there's nothing, that could come up that would cause embarrassment to the league or any of the brands around the league. So it's a pretty thorough process. That's why there's no surprises here. There's not going to be someone, this isn't eBay where you get online and some person who's never been vetted is going to go, oh my gosh, we have a surprise owner of the Blazers now because they had the highest bid. This is a pretty controlled process.
You've mentioned Allen and Company here a couple times. I think some people will probably make a connection there that's not there. Allen and Company is not tied to the Allen estate, to Jody Allen, Paul Allen, anything along those lines.
No, it's a bank. It's a global bank. They do these types of transactions pretty frequently, so they've got experience doing this. The other thing that's interesting that's been reported previously is from everyone I've spoken to, Jody Allen as the trustee and Bert Kolde as, a former colleague of Paul Allen's, they have incentives, let's say, to make sure that the Blazers sell for the highest price possible. So there's another reason, another group that wants the Blazers to sell for the highest price possible. Obviously, the other reason is you want to put as much money into the Paul G. Allen Foundation as possible to fund his philanthropic efforts that he was passionate about.
Now, I've seen you've had a couple of tweets about that, about this, in that Phil Knight was rumored to have submitted an offer, and it was widely reported that he tried to make a move. He and Alan Smolinski, an investor and real estate mogul down in L.A., a couple of years ago, they went all in. Now, that was rebuffed by the Allen estate and the Allen Trust. Is that a potential, though, that he could get back into this as long as he's the highest bidder?
I would be very surprised. I have not spoken with Phil Knight. I have spoken with others who are in the Phil Knight stratosphere, and I would be very surprised if at 87 years old, Phil Knight got back into this. I think there's a variety of reasons, some of which you just mentioned. But I just don't think – the only way I could see him getting involved is if he found out that the Blazers were being purchased by out-of-towners who really had their eyes focused on moving the team from Oregon. Maybe he gets involved to try and keep them here. But other than that, I think he's 87. He's given so much charity at a number of different places. I just don't think that he's going to get involved at this point. 7 years ago, yeah, he could have gotten involved, but now I don't see it.
I know you've had him on your show. We need to get this going. We're starting the grassroots movement. We think that maybe the Luka trade pissed off Mark Cuban enough, right? Can you get the wheels in motion too? Maybe we get Mark Cuban to start bidding on this? Get Mark Cuban to Portland?
I highly doubt it. First, Mark still has a piece of the Mavericks. It's a small piece, but he still has a piece of the Mavericks. He was over the moon last night with them getting Cooper Flagg online, and in interviews I saw. I don't think he's going to come to Portland, and that's kind of the elephant in the room too, right? It's no secret that downtown Portland has gone through some tough times in the last 5 years. So if you're an out-of-town owner, does that play any kind of factor into I need to come to Portland. I really need to vet the city, make sure city leadership is behind this, make sure that, if I'm going to make this kind of an investment, and especially if I'm going to build a new arena and have development of real estate around the arena, I want to make sure that, everything is headed in the right direction. So that will be interesting to watch as well.
Brian, we appreciate the time and you taking a few minutes for us here, and really appreciate it. Brian Berger, SB Radio on Twitter, Sports Business Radio. Thank you, man. Really appreciate it.
Thank you guys so much. Have a great day.
Thanks, Brian.
Look, there's a lot of interesting things in there. Some of them are, the expansion aspect of it is a big one in that.
And he hinted at the potential motivation for both Jody and Bert. And what's unknown in that contract language, in that estate language, is whether or not those guys get a percentage of the sale. I've heard it both ways, not percentage of just the sale, but a percentage of the expansion fees, because that money goes to. So when an expansion franchise happens in a team in Seattle and Vegas, say it's $12 billion, that $12 billion gets split up among the 30 other owners. And it's unclear whether or not that money it would go into the trust or whether or not Jody and Bert would get a cut of that. But also, it very much does sound like that they would also get a bonus, as it were, for the sale of the team.
Okay. The other one is something that we talked about at the onset of the show, which is expansion looming in coming soon. It would negate a lot of the anxiety and nervousness about an owner coming in and wanting to say, hey, we're going to move the team out of town. Because the two markets that are kind of the last ones standing are Vegas and Seattle.
Yeah.
Without basketball. And without the NBA. You mentioned San Diego.
And
NBA
Baltimore
has been there
Yeah.
and left. Baltimore has been there and left. Baltimore also has the Wizards right there. The NBA is not in the business of moving teams. They do not want it to happen, do not like it to happen. And it would be very hard to see that happening. But at the same time, if somebody comes in and comes over the top, and they spend that kind of money, the NBA knows. They go, oh, well, who are we to tell them what to do with their money? I would be surprised, though, if that were to happen just based on what Adam Silver has said before.
Yeah.
But that can also change because guess who he works for? Whoever buys that team.
The owners.
Welcome back to this best of edition of Danny and Dusty. Jeff Rust in here holding down the fort for you. Coming up next, we're going to wrap up our coverage from May the 13th, that being the day the Blazers announced they were for sale. And guess what? That also covered up much of the previous evening's goings on. It was the draft lottery in which the Mavericks got an obscene amount of luck and the Blazers did not. That's coming up next, this best of edition of Danny and Dusty.
but she's all you'd ever want.
Welcome back to this best of edition of Danny and Dusty. Jeff Rust here along with you for the ride. Most of the show so far has been about the announced sale of the Trailblazers, or them going on the market anyway. This segment here, we're going to shift our focus to that previous night's goings on, the NBA draft lottery, in which, well, somebody on the Mavericks rubbed their lucky rabbit's foot while somebody with the Blazers, I don't know, maybe they ate the rabbit.
One of the most unthinkable scenarios, both just as a thought process and mathematically, transpired last night. As the Dallas Mavericks with a 1.8% chance get the number 1 overall pick, the San Antonio Spurs jump up with a 6% chance to the number 2 overall pick, and the Philadelphia 76ers jump up and keep their pick at number 3. And you had the number at that combination, Dusty, as 0.014.
0.0114% of that being the draft order. Dallas, San Antonio, Philly.
Slightly more than 0.01%.
Yeah. It happened. And Nico Harrison got rewarded for making the dumbest trade of all time.
Arguably the worst trade in sports history 3 months ago has now come full circle with getting one of the best prospects I've ever seen in my 15 years of doing this.
Yeah, this is spoiler alert. The Mavericks have said today they are going to keep the pick. They're going to draft Cooper Flagg. Okay. Way to go, guys. Way to do the math on that.
Yeah.
There's the video of Nico Harrison jumping out of his chair and getting super excited. And I guess good for him. I would love to see the video of Adam Silver when he saw that, because his face was probably far different. Like, oh my God, I have to deal with this now. The conspiracy theory of the NBA wanted LA to be good. LeBron is in the twilight of his career, forcing the hand of Nico Harrison to trade his best player for essentially nothing. And now they get rewarded with the number 1 overall pick. That's not going anywhere. People still talk about the frozen envelope.
Well, particularly since this is now the 3rd straight superstar to be traded to Los Angeles in a row, and have that team get the number 1 overall pick the next draft.
Yikes.
Chris Paul to the Clippers, Anthony Davis. Anthony Davis to the Lakers, Zion Williamson. Luka Doncic to the Lakers, Cooper Flagg.
That same draft year? Same draft? Really?
Mm-hmm.
Holy smokes.
Remember, Chris Paul was supposed to be a Laker.
The Maverick CEO, Rick Welts, he was in the draft lottery room.
The look on his face.
He said, I'm the only person who was in this room 40 years ago. I was in charge of the NBA draft lottery 40 years ago when Patrick Ewing won. I've been doing conspiracy theory stories ever since. This is very surreal, personally. That is a quote that Ben Golliver tweeted out last night from Mav CEO Rick Welts.
And Ben Golliver was in the room, and he will join us tomorrow, and we will ask him about all things lottery and ownership-wise as it pertains to Portland. He also, Ben Golliver, had the heartbreaking news that the Portland Trailblazers, for the second time, were 1 number off. And not just 1 number as it could be any number in that order, but the difference of a single digit from getting the number 1 overall pick and the number 2 overall pick. They had the first 3 numbers in the order. They did not. They had number 6. It was number 5 and number 7.
Yeah, there's a lot of other numbers that there could be, but there were also 2 losses from being where the San Antonio Spurs were.
Mm-hmm. And
that would have been a lot easier to do. And we talked about this yesterday. Mm-hmm. That was one of the teams where it's like, if San Antonio jumps up, that is crippling for Portland, because of the fact that that was a team that was within striking distance.
And I'm not going to do it with you because it's dumb and it doesn't make any sense because the teams with the worst records in the entire NBA fell out of the top 4.
I would have loved to be 5th or 6th rather than 11th.
You don't want to go through a 15-16 win season for that.
Yeah, but
talking to people with those organizations, they'll put on the smiling face and all that.
Yeah.
They're pissed.
Yeah, absolutely they are.
They threw a season, an entire fan base down the drain, and they have nothing to show for it.
Yeah, but you know what? 2 losses is also that right there.
You can't play that game, though.
No, you can because you're the numbers guy, Danny.
Yes.
You say this. It's all about
and
improving your odds.
And the number 11 team and the number 10 team have won the lottery in back-to-back years.
Yeah, but you can control the one thing, which is increasing your odds. And
the thing that came out of this for me is the new lottery odds are working.
Yeah, they are. They sure are.
It's preventing, or at least
preventing it.
Not preventing. It is not rewarding tanking.
Yeah. Well, tell that to the Sixers. they pulled the plug on that.
And
season.
here's the thing.
And so did the Spurs once Wemby went down.
They didn't, though. Chris Paul still played all 82 games. Harrison Barnes still playing heavy minutes. They shut down Wemby, and that was the difference. And because they had to.
And De'Aaron Fox, too, after they got him.
Who had hand surgery.
Yeah. But was playing. I mean, they did it. And this is the thing that's frustrating is that the Blazers did it in all of the other years except for this year, where the draft is loaded.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the one where it's like, why was this year the year? You know? And now the work is on Joe Cronin in the front office to where you better be able to do something this offseason with what you have, because this year did not, sure, development.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Still in the same place heading into next year.
And Sean Highkin was also in the room for the lottery and had a quote from Joe Cronin. It basically said, yeah, we would have liked to move up. You always want to move up, but we're happy with where we are. It's the same spiel you'll get from everyone. Now the work begins. You've got the combine here going on this week and kind of what comes out of that. The first mock drafts. Pretty much everyone has the Blazers, if they use the pick at 11, taking Kasparas Jacksionis, the guard from Illinois. I've seen some people like, well, Concanibble could be there. No, he won't. Concanibble's going top 6. What's crazy about this is because of this, the way the lottery shook out, what it means for the Giannis sweepstakes. That's what's really crazy coming at us. And you've got the Tatum injury. You've got the Dame injury. We may be headed towards one of the biggest shakeups we've seen in the NBA in a very, very long time. Now, the Luka trade notwithstanding, that was maybe the biggest shakeup we've ever seen.
Boy.
But there's a lot.
This is a guy that wants out. He wants out of Milwaukee, and you are going to be able to see what the circling of the vultures looks like. And now, look, Houston was one of those teams. They held Phoenix's pick, and they're sitting at 10th.
Mm-hmm.
If they want to get in on Giannis, they have the 10th pick. San Antonio is sitting at 2nd.
And that's the really interesting thing. You brought up De'Aaron Fox. The second the Spurs moved up, my phone started blowing up with, Dallas getting that was insane, but the Spurs, they can trade De'Aaron Fox. They can say, thanks, bud.
Yep.
But we have a guy that might end up being better than you, significantly cheaper, or we can now package Dylan Harper to go get Giannis.
Yeah. You can, the number 2 overall pick, Milwaukee does not have a draft pick this year. It is sitting in Brooklyn.
And now what do the Celtics do? Do they start making their vets that are title ready available? Do they pull the ripcord on Derek White?
Jaylen Brown.
Or Jrue Holiday?
Yeah.
The number of guys that are looking around right now and going, what the hell is going to happen this summer? Just skyrocketed.
Ain't nobody trading for Jason Tatum, unfortunately. No. That young man, Achilles surgery, that sucks.
And with the Philadelphia 76ers moving up to 3rd, the mock draft or the big boards, Cooper Flagg, Dylan Harper, and I would say probably 80% of people out there had a pretty hard lock on VJ Edgecombe going third. The Philadelphia 76ers have Tyrese Maxey and Jared McCain and Quentin Grimes.
Which could make Maxey available to trade because they need some salary cap relief as well.
Or do they now bump somebody up like Derek Queen or Ace Bailey into the third spot?
Oh, Ace Bailey. That would be...
It's a redemption arc for Ace Bailey because Ace Bailey's been falling.
That would be such a Daryl Morey move. That would be a Daryl Morey move.
Well, and think about it. Outside of Joel Embiid, they don't really have bigs. Do they look at a Derek Queen?
I was going to say... Well, Ace Bailey's not that because he's only 6'7", not 6'10".
Yeah, we didn't really talk about the measurements yesterday. The measurements came out for a lot of guys. Cooper Flagg is bigger than Ace Bailey. And all the talk, and if you go to Rutgers' website, I still think they have it. Ace Bailey was listed at 6'10".
Yikes.
VJ Edgecombe, though, came out at 6'4" barefoot.
Hey-o.
But now you have Utah, who had the worst record in the NBA, and we talked about it. The likelihood was they were going to fall back. And they fell back all the way. The Washington Wizards fell back all the way. What the hell do the Charlotte Hornets do now? Picking at fourth.
Whatever they were going to do before, which is bungle it.
I mean, you look at them, though. You look at the way their roster is currently constructed. LaMelo Ball is a guy that I've heard that, Charlotte could get out of the business of. If VJ Edgecombe is now there at 4.
It is a guard run after you get past Cooper Flagg. And so
it's very interesting because the teams that are there are not really guard needy.
Yeah, you look at it, what you have Queen from Maryland, the Murray kid from
Colin
South
Murray
Carolina, the Malawak from
Malawak will
Duke.
probably be the first big off the board, and if I had to guess today, Brooklyn is the first destination. If he somehow gets past there, Atlanta, because they're out of the Clint Capella business.
But who else? There's no other big bodies.
No.
Yikes.
It's the draft order.
They're big. Some of them are big guards.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Yakashionis he measured in at, I think, 6'4" 3/4 barefoot. So basically 6'6". Yegor Demon measured in at 6'8" barefoot.
Man. Yeah, that's crazy.
It's going to be very interesting now because of where Portland is positioned, even falling back from 10 to 11. I'm not saying it's good. Don't misconstrue that because further up is always better. But I very much wonder what Portland's going to do because I think it opens up them very much so for trade.
Yeah, move the pick and start wheeling and dealing, baby.
Jeff Russ back here with you on this best of edition of Danny and Dusty. Coming up on the other side of the break, one potential Trailblazers new owner bows out. But first, here's me with an update.
Now, from the George McCoy at Warren Allen Sports Desk, a Sports Center update on 1080 The Fan.
First on The Fan, late last night, ESPN's Shams Charania reporting the Trailblazers sending guard Anthony Simons and 2 second-round picks to the Celtics for point guard Drew Holiday. Portland originally acquired Holiday from Milwaukee in the Damian Lillard trade, but he never donned a Portland uniform before being shipped off to Boston. The 35-year-old is owed about $67 million over the next 2 seasons and a $37.2 million player option for the 2027-28 season. Shams also reporting Blazers defensive stalwart Matisse Thybulle exercising his $11.5 million option for next season. And more Shams. He's all over the place, reporting the Pelicans trading C.J. McCollum, Kelly Olynyk, and a second-round pick to the Wizards for Jordan Poole, Saddiq Bey, and the number 40 overall pick on Thursday. Cal Raleigh continues his hot streak. He's got home runs in 5 of his last 6 games, including his league-leading 32nd in last night's win over the Twins. Same 2 teams back at it again tonight. Luis Castillo on the hill for Seattle, opposite Chris Paddock for Minnesota, 4:40 first pitch on Root Sports. More sports scores and stories in 30 minutes. I'm Jeff Rust from the George McCoy at Warren Allen Sports Desk. Hurt and missing work, insurance companies acting like jerks. Don't call your mom. Call George McCoy at warrenallen.com.
This is your home for year-round NFL coverage. The Odyssey app and Portland's sports leader, 1080 The Fan.
Welcome back in to this best of edition of Danny and Dusty. Jeff Rust along for the ride here with you as the guys are out on the golf course at Langdon Farms for the 11th annual Fan Golf Classic. We continue on with some more Blazers news from the last month or so, from the day, the period around when the Blazers announced they were going up for sale. A certain person was a popular choice in terms of who fans wanted to have make a run at the team, but said person bowed out of the running.
We do not know who the next owner of the Portland Trailblazers will be, but we do know who it won't be.
Sweet Jesus, thank him for just getting this over with.
Phil Knight will not be the next owner of the Portland Trailblazers.
There you go, everybody. It's done. It's over with. Stop bringing his name up.
He spoke to Mike Vorkunov.
Yep. Yeah, The Athletic.
Of The Athletic. And he said, 5 years ago when I was a younger man, I had great interest in being part of the Portland Trailblazers franchise. However, at my current age, I can confirm that I no longer have interest.
Yeah, that younger man's doing a lot of heavy lifting for a then 82-year-old and then an 84-year-old 3 years ago when he talked about it too.
Yeah. He's sharp. He still is sharp.
Oh, yeah, no, he's got his faculties.
Still looks really good. If I get to 87, I
and
hope
look
I
like
look
that. Yeah. I mean, I've seen him moving around at Duck games. Like he's still got some pep in his step.
You know what sucks about that? He's a lifelong runner.
Yeah.
You know, and you're like, what is he doing? Damn.
Keith Richards.
So there's that. All right. I think that there is a bummer in that because even 5 years ago, Phil Knight being the owner of the Portland Trailblazers, it would not have had the impact of Phil Knight, who was the visionary of Nike.
Yeah.
Because he was so hands-on with everything that he did in building Nike up that you wouldn't be able to get that from even, as he says, a younger man 5 years ago at 82. Just the energy that it takes to do that, not possible. What I think I would have appreciated at any level 5 years ago or now is that Phil Knight would have bought that team with the intentions that it never leaves this damn city or this state ever, full stop. And that would be the peace of mind for Blazer fans because, look, the reality of it is outside of Phil Knight, there's nobody else with $4 billion in this state that can do that.
Well, there are people with that money, but that's every penny that they have. When you talk about the CEO of Dutch Brothers or Tim Cook, who I don't think is actually at that level now. I think he's relatively close, but like
that would be of the Columbia Sportswear.
Yeah, and then you've got Jensen Huang, who has, what we talked about yesterday, has had no interest in sports. But yeah, that's what we talk about. When you talk about Oregon and even Northwest, like when you go into Seattle, even then it's when you're talking about this kind of money, it's an infinitesimally small list of humans on this planet who can be like, yeah, no, that's fine, $4 billion.
Yeah. Well, Phil is out. Phil is out.
Mm-hmm. So we can move past that.
Still bully Mark Cuban.
Oh, yeah.
Just say, sell your stake in the Mavs.
Yeah.
Come up here. We promise we won't trade a star because we don't have one to trade.
Yeah, see?
We don't even have one to trade.
Yeah. Mold the clay.
Yeah, like we'll be okay, dude. Like you don't have to worry about it. Like we won't trade Luka. We don't have one.
And you could have if you want to collect superstar white dudes, you can do that in Oregon too.
Sure. Yeah, I don't care. I don't care what they look like.
I don't either, but apparently it's
just give me any superstar.
Dirk,
I
Luka, Flag.
Yeah, I don't care.
Nash.
I have zero care. Just give me a superstar. That's all I want. That's all I want.
That franchise going from one to another
all I want.
Super frustrating.
Yeah. Well, the NBA is not rigged.
No. Not at all.
So no Phil Knight for the Trailblazers, and let's face it, at 87 years old, that was probably a long shot anyway. Coming up next on this Best of edition, Washington Post senior NBA writer Ben Golliver, also Beaverton High School alumnus, go Beavs. He stopped by to talk the sale of the Trailblazers and also the draft lottery and what it could mean for the Trailblazers in tomorrow's NBA draft. That is all on the flip side. We'll catch you in 2 and 2 on this Best of edition of Danny and Dusty on 1080 The Fan.
Hello, sports fans.
Welcome back. Jeff Rust with you here on this best of edition of Danny and Dusty. We've got one more segment to close out this hour number 2. Washington Post NBA senior writer Ben Golliver, Beaverton High School alumnus. He called in to talk the upcoming sale of the Portland Trailblazers, what that means for the team and potential buyers. He also talked the lottery and the draft. A nice lengthy conversation that'll take us up to the end of the hour here. So here we go with Ben Golliver.
I've got a question for you. I promised the listeners right out of the gate. You were in the room for the draft lottery. Is the draft lottery rigged, Ben?
Not that I can tell, but, these weird results keep popping up. I understand why everybody's thinking twice about it. I felt so bad for the Blazers fans. I mean, another year where it comes down to the final ping pong ball. One number off, they could have had Cooper Flagg. I think he would have had a chance to really emerge as a franchise player in Portland, and I think the market would have loved him. He's such a hard-playing guy, amazing defensive presence, but also a talented scorer. And instead, now he has to go walk in Luka Doncic's cowboy boots, right, down there in Dallas. So crazy turn of events. Not only did Dallas jump up, San Antonio jumped up. So that sparks all the rumors about maybe they're going to trade for Giannis. It was one thing after another. Philly kept their pick when it looked like they might lose their pick. It was the wildest of all the lottery drawings that I've witnessed. I was hearing people just, basically, not shout profanities, but let profanities out as the ping pong balls were coming because they couldn't believe their eyes. They couldn't believe the results.
Now, when you sent the tweet that the Blazers were one ball off, in your mind, were you thinking actively like this is going to hurt so many souls in Portland right now?
Well, it's actually become like an annual gimmick. I don't love to do it, but this has happened over and over, guys. I mean, it's not my fault. Don't shoot the messenger. That's the rule, right? We know it got really close with Wembanyama. But, the one thing I can say is misery loves company. It's not just you guys. The Wizards have also come very consistently close to the number 1 pick in all 3 of the last drafts. And so their fans are right there suffering with Blazers fans when it comes to that ping pong ball luck.
Ben, obviously the news drops yesterday morning that the Allen estate is putting the Trailblazers up officially for sale. What was your kind of first thought process, and where do you think this thing is headed, and where do you think this thing ultimately ends up?
Well, I just love the timing of it. If they do win the lottery, maybe you're not selling, maybe you're holding out for a better offer, maybe you're waiting a little bit. So you want to make sure that you don't have that amazing asset, to kind of maybe goose the purchase price a little bit. I think with the Celtics, it's kind of the reverse, right? They sell before this Jason Tatum injury for $6.1 billion. I wonder what the price would be, honestly, right now, where they're looking at, a second round exit, Tatum being out all of next season, and all of that. I wonder if that would have impacted the final price for the Celtics. These are kinds of questions you have to ask in a league where the superstar level players drive so much of the marketing and so much of the financial aspect of the game. Obviously, I think it's a day long coming. I think I've been pretty critical of Jody Allen over the years. I think when you're the owner, you have a real obligation to communicate with the media, communicate with the fan base, explain your vision, be a public face of that organization, rally the troops during tough years. Sort of like we saw Mark Cuban do over the years with the Dallas Mavericks, always trying to cultivate that fan base. And it's just been MIA, and radio silence from her. I just don't think you can be a successful organization in a league that's as competitive as the NBA without an owner at the top who is all in, completely invested, and, willing to take the lumps when times are bad and willing to be out front when the times are good. So I think even though we don't really know at this point who the leading candidates would be to buy the Blazers, I saw the report that Phil Knight's no longer interested. I mean, that's unfortunate. That feels like a real missed opportunity, for the franchise a few years ago. But to me, it's a positive, welcome development because the current regime was stuck in its ways, and its ways were not working.
Ben Golliver is our guest, Washington Post national NBA writer. Obviously, when a team goes for sale in a small market like Portland, and especially since we saw just up the road in Seattle what happened when they sold, there's the apprehension. Adam Silver's made it clear they don't want to be in the business of moving teams anymore. What is your sense of around the league and not to kind of maybe, I don't know, squash the fears of this team leaving?
Well, I think, first of all, we haven't seen a team move in quite a while. It's been almost 20 years since the Sonics moved. The Kings flirted with it, but they didn't move. There was some talk about the Pelicans. Maybe they would move, and they didn't move. And so it has been a while since we've, seen a relocation. And so I think that should comfort some people. I think at the same time, you never take a great fan base for granted. Obviously, Blazers fans have been through it all, and it's been a long-standing franchise in that market. And so that's a real asset. If you're an owner, you want to buy a team that has public support, that is, a major pillar of the city. That makes it attractive. You don't want one of these organizations where, you're like the fourth horse in a 14 town, right? Like that is a much tougher business proposition. And I think the other thing that could benefit, Blazers fans or kind of calm their nerves is the idea of expansion. There's some real talk that this summer things could heat up a little bit, and maybe we're finally going to see a team in Vegas and a team in Seattle. That process kind of really beginning after so many years of being teased. When you go back and look at, some of the major checkpoints the NBA had talked about, they wanted to get a new collective bargaining agreement deal done, and they wanted a new media rights deal done. Well, they got both of those done. Then the Celtics sell for a record $6.1 billion. So that looks like a nice target, if you're trying to come up with how much you're going to charge for an expansion team, right? So you add all those things up. The business is quite good for the NBA right now. It makes sense to expand. And if you have two new teams coming in, well, that's two obvious markets that wouldn't be in play for the Portland Trailblazers, right? And so I think from that standpoint, people should be relatively in a good place about it. But, there are some holdups, right? I mean, there's been a lot of challenges with the television deal there locally. The arena is one of the, at this point, one of the older arenas, even though I know they've done a lot of modifications and upgrades to it over the years. So those are factors that people should consider, in terms of exactly how much is this team going to, sell for, like what the price will be. But ultimately, like, you don't want to leave a great basketball market. And to me, I mean, I travel city to city, all year long, especially during the playoffs. And Blazers fans bring it just as well as anybody does. And I don't think you want to take that for granted.
Well, Ben, on the basketball side of things, when you look at the kind of the events that have transpired in the last 72 hours, obviously the Blazers fall back to pick number 11, and then the next day the sales announced. In leading up into this, the Blazers ownership extended both general manager Joe Cronin and head coach Chauncey Billups. When you look at now the team being sold, what do you look at as far as how much wiggle room, leeway, things that they can do to improve the team? Because if you look at the team right now, there's only 3 guys that are under contract currently, not counting UFAs, RFAs, and options, club options, for the club in the 2026-27 season. And so that seems like they're trying to keep the books as clear as possible. But if you're talking about building this team out, you have to decide on Shaedon Sharpe and Scoot Henderson and Denny Avdia and Toumani Camara, and you have so many decisions to make. What kind of impact do you think that the potential sale actually puts on that?
Well, you don't know until you know who the buyer is, right? Because we've seen some buyers come in, like Matt Ishbia from the Phoenix Suns, who had no ties to Phoenix. He's a Michigan guy, and he decides, let's trade the entire farm for Kevin Durant like 3 days onto the job, right? And so I think typically what the new owners do look for, those, they want the flexibility factor. And, they tend to want a little bit of a continuation or a continuity, I should say. And so I think that's why the extensions help. Like, whoever's buying the team knows who's going to be in charge. And often, I mean, Ishbia is like, the exception to the rule. Typically, the new owners want to have like a year evaluation period where they get their feet wet, they understand how the NBA works. A lot of times they get really excited to come to every single game, go in the locker room, take pictures with the players. They do all that kind of new owner stuff, right? And then they really get serious about how they want to run the team. And so I think not having tons of long-term contracts, I think that is viewed as a benefit to potential, prospective owners. The last thing you want is like some supermax contract for a guy who's injured, that's going to clog up the books and make it hard for you to put your own stamp on the team. And then I think, despite the fact that those guys have extensions, I think everybody knows when a new owner comes in, typically they want to get their own people, who they trust to run the organization. And so it winds up that first season becomes a prove-it year. So let's just be very honest about this. I mean, the sale can take a long time. The Celtics one dragged out for all the way past the All-Star break, even though they announced it last summer that they were going to sell. And then there's going to be a transition period for the new owner. And then, that person's really going to feel probably up to speed in their second year. And so I think if you're a Blazers fan, you have to, be realistic and expect some choppiness here over the next couple of years. Now, if I was in Joe Cronin's position, what I want to do in the middle of that transition is really prioritize the young players, right? Not only do I want to make sure they get a lot of minutes, but I want to make sure I get those guys under longer term contracts, that the guys who I truly feel are part of the core, because you have to do this now as like a 2, 3, 4-year type window. You're not necessarily in that like 1 year, year-to-year mentality of like, how can we get into the playoffs? I don't think that's quite your goal here. I think you want to be great longer term for the next ownership group, right? So identify your best young players, make sure they're under some longer term contracts than you described, and that's how you go forward. And if that means you have to trade some of the higher priced veterans or you just move on from some of those guys, that's how I would handle things.
You mentioned Matt Ishbia, and being a new owner is really tough. It's a tough business to wrap your head around. Professional sports, there's only so many teams available to own in various sports. What, as you kind of look from your view, being in a national writer now, for a new owner, what traits do you feel make a good new owner to a franchise?
Well, to me, the most important thing is love for the game, and that's why I kind of have harped on Jody Allen. We have no idea, what her relationship to basketball is. She's just inheriting this team from Paul Allen. It was so clear that Paul Allen genuinely loved basketball, right? Now, he made some silly decisions along the way. Everybody will, but, I mean, he was making it popular, running up huge luxury tax bills way before all these current owners were doing it, right? He was a trailblazer in that front, no pun intended. So I think love for the game translates to financial support, not only when you're talking about your players, but you're looking at your medical staff, your coaching staff, running a first-class operation that players want to be a part of and stick around, building a culture. It starts with the owner loving basketball and having that team be a high priority in their life. And so Matt Ishbia has made a lot of mistakes down there in Phoenix, but one thing you can't question is the fact that this guy loves basketball. And so sometimes maybe he loves it a little too much. You almost have to kind of reel him in a little bit. So that's why another top characteristic would be self-awareness. You want owners who know what they know and also know what they don't know. And, are willing to trust their executives to make the kinds of industry decisions that maybe they're not as familiar with, right? You want to strike a good balance there. I think the Celtics ownership group has been a phenomenal example of this. They were so invested in the Celtics that they realized even a franchise legend like Danny Ainge wasn't getting it done anymore. And they made a big swing to, basically part with Danny Ainge, bring in Brad Stevens. And nobody's done a better job than Brad Stevens around the league over the last 5 years, except maybe Sam Presti, right? And they've really trusted him to make those types of decisions. And of course, they've spent the money to support him. So, and it paid off with the championship last year, right? So I think that's a great model for what you're looking for in an owner. You want people involved in the idea of basketball being great and being a priority, but you don't want them to be meddlesome. That's sort of the right balance to strike. And hopefully Portland can find a group like that. But I'll say this, it's getting harder and harder to do this because so many of these teams are now selling for so much money that it can't just be one person who buys the team, right? Like Steve Ballmer's got $2 billion just sitting around, so he could buy the Clippers, no problem. Most people don't have that, right? They have to bring in minority investors. They have to bring in partners. They have to take private equity money. And all of that stuff it adds more cooks to the kitchen and makes things more difficult. And I think that's something to consider in Portland, too. It's not like there's a whole bunch of billionaires just sitting around in Portland waiting to, spend all of their money on a basketball team. And so that could, lead to a situation where there is like kind of a conglomeration that buys it, right? Or it could lead to a situation where it's just an out-of-town owner. And either one of those, it just presents different challenges if you're the Blazers, right? Yeah. Especially if you're a fan who was used to Paul Allen, who was at every single game, who was fully committed to the city, who built the arena in the 90s and all that kind of stuff. It can just be different when you have outside ownership groups. One example of that's Milwaukee. They had two guys from New York who were running the team. They were taking private jets back and forth to the game. It worked out okay. I mean, they won a championship in 2021, but one of those owners wound up selling his stake, and he's already out because, he just figured, hey, this was a good investment. I'm not really in this for the long haul. The city of Milwaukee was not his priority. And so that's something you have to worry about, right? Like if the hedge fund guys come, the private equity guys come, you got to wonder, is Portland their priority, or are they just trying to flip a an organization and make a quick buck.
Well, you just explained when you want a new owner, you're trying to find a unicorn. Now we need to find a whole herd of unicorns because there's multiple investors. Seems easy.
It's
We're going to do it.
Part, but if you get the one person, and they get to be in charge, and then everybody else is just kind of supporting, that's kind of the best case you can hope for right now. That's what the Celtics are, by the way. They got this guy Chisholm who's going to be like the face of it, but he has a whole bunch of financial support backing him. But the reason why they liked him as the face of it is because he grew up as a Celtics fan and he was from Massachusetts, right? So that could be hard to find. If you guys know any billionaires in Portland, I would call them immediately and tell them to start raising the money as quickly as possible.
Ben, good stuff as always, man. Really appreciate the time. Enjoy Minnesota.
Sounds good, guys. All right, take care.
All right, that is Ben Golliver, Washington Post national NBA writer.
That is going to do it for hour number 2 of this best of edition of Danny and Dusty. Coming up next hour, we'll wrap up Trailblazers talk. First up, we'll have on a day that Patrick Harris was in for Dusty, we talked to Tyler Rucker of No Ceilings. He will preview tomorrow's NBA draft and what he thinks the Blazers might be up to. We'll hear a little bit about Ace Bailey and his stock falling. Can he fall far enough down to the Blazers at number 11? Then we'll switch things up. We'll go talk about Senate Bill 110, which appropriated funds for a new Major League Baseball park in the South Waterfront. And we'll end things up with my Mount Rushmore. Why? Because I am the captain now. That's all coming up in hour number 3 on this best of edition of Danny and Dusty on 1080 The Fan.
I'm Chelsea Messenger, helping you beat the books with BetMGM Network. Today, we're taking the under 8 runs between the Phillies and the Astros. Ranger Suarez has been fantastic for the Phils this year. He's 6-1 with a 2.20 ERA. Framber Valdez has also been solid for the Astros and is backed up by the second best bullpen in baseball. Astros are 24-16 to the under at home. Phillies 23-14-1 to the under on the road. Under 8 is Bet Smarter, beat the books. Download the BetMGM app. Please gamble responsibly.
You ever try fixing your car and realize you're missing that one part? Yeah, been there. That's why eBay's my go-to. They've got millions of parts, guaranteed to fit. I'm talking brake pads for when yours have seen one too many miles of stop and go. Oil filters, because you don't mess around with your engine care. Even got this cold air intake on my watch list. I might just go for it. To keep the ride cool and your DIY streak high. Find all the parts you need at prices you'll love. Guaranteed to fit every time. eBay. Things. People. Love. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply.
Every success you've had began with a great opportunity. Now there's another one. Last aid year, University of Maryland Global Campus awarded over $21 million in scholarships to qualified students, including community college students, service members, veterans, and working adults. Now is the time to move your career forward with an online and accredited skills-based education. Learn more at umgc.edu. Certified to operate in Virginia by Chef.
Empower. Tim collects bobbleheads. A lot of bobbleheads. Baseball bobbleheads. Race car bobbleheads. Little chihuahua bobbleheads. He's got an entire room strictly for bobbleheads. Does he need them? No. Is his wife mad about it? A little. But Tim works with Empower, and he got good at money, so he can be a little bad. Ooh, horse bobblehead. Classy, Tim. Empower. Invest well, live a little. Start today at empower.com.
Hey, it's Zook. Spring is here, longer days, warmer weather, so don't wait until you're sweating buckets to find out that your AC needs help. I love the high-efficiency train system A&E Plumbing, Heating, and Air installed at my house, and now's the time to book my checkup, and you should do the same. A&E is locally owned with a lifetime workmanship guarantee. That's right. If they don't do it right, they fix it for free forever. A&E is the real deal. Call A&E or visit aeheatingandcooling.com today. Your local independent train dealer. It's hard to stop a train. CCB number 203004. Still getting
The Fan.
Jeff Rust here with your SportsCenter update. First on The Fan, late last night, ESPN's Shams Charania reported the Trailblazers sending guard Anthony Simons and 2 second-round picks to the Celtics for point guard Drew Holiday. Portland originally acquired Holiday from Milwaukee in the Damian Lillard trade, but he never donned a Portland uniform before being sent to Boston. The 35-year-old is owed about $67 million over the next 2 seasons and has a $37.2 million player option for 2027-28. Shams also reporting Blazers defensive stalwart Matisse Thybulle exercising his $11.5 million option for next season. And ESPN Shams Charania reporting the Pelicans, trading C.J. McCollum, Kelly Olynyk, and a second-round pick to the Wizards for Jordan Poole, Saddiq Bey, and the number 40 overall pick on Thursday. More sports scores and stories in 30 minutes. I'm Jeff Rust from the George McCoy at Warren Allen Sports Desk. Hurt and missing work? Insurance companies acting like jerks? Don't call your mom. Call George McCoy at warrenallen.com.
Jump back to earlier parts of your favorite fan shows on the Odyssey app. The only way to rewind Portland's sports leader, 1080 The Fan. This is Danny and Dusty.
What in God's name is going on in here? What was that ruckus?
With Danny Meringue and Dusty, the Fan Man Hera.
What ruckus? I was just in my office and I heard a ruckus.
Danny and Dusty on the Odyssey app.
Describe the ruckus, sir.
And 1080.
Don't mess with the bull, young man. You'll get the horns.
The
Fan. Jeff Rust here with you as Ryan Buckley just scared the crap out of me here in the studio. Call him the Seidler. It's like, what was that? Was that Judd Reinhold in Seinfeld? Anywho, hour number 3 here on this best of edition of Danny and Dusty. Jeff Rust here with you. The guys are out at Langdon Farms for the 11th annual Fan Golf Classic. If my math serves me correctly, I think I'm already up against it for this third hour. So we're going to get right to it. On a day when Patrick Harris was in for Dusty as he does his brand man duties, we talked to Tyler Rucker of No Ceilings about tomorrow's NBA draft and what the Trailblazers might have up their sleeves.
Without further ado, we turn it over. We have Tyler Rucker from No Ceilings coming on the program to talk a little Blazer draft. And Tyler, how you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing great. It's always a joy this time of the year with the draft getting crazy, and thank you guys for having me on. I always enjoy this one.
Yeah, do you ever get worried that people only like you because we're 25 days away from the draft?
You know what? It's just so busy this time of the year. It doesn't really set in until probably months after. But now that you're bringing it to me, yeah, probably the anxiety will kick in a little bit. But no, it's fun. It's a fun time for everyone to get excited. I kind of feed off that energy because I'm like, yeah, let's talk basketball. Well, no better way.
Tyler, obviously the Blazers, they fall back in draft position back to 11. We have the weirdness that happens on lottery night with the top 3 being the most cursed top 3 in NBA history. And how that thing's going to shake things out. When you look at this Blazers team and you look at this roster, they have so much young depth already. When you're trying to see, project the board, and you guys at No Ceilings, you guys just put out your latest big mock. When you guys look at the Blazers in that range, who do you think is the best player available, and is that best player available the best fit?
It's tough for a team like Portland, which, I watched a lot of their games this year because it's just one of those things where you like to watch the young teams that are kind of built into the draft. And it's like, okay, what direction could they go in? And Portland's quickly putting so many impressive pieces together. They found gold with Toumani Camara. They've got a lot of intriguing guys that I think are also ready to take that next step this year. So it gets tough with a team like that when you're projecting them in the draft because, obviously we could say they can go best player available, but at some point when you keep kind of doubling down on that, do you try to also kind of look at like, hey, what does the roster need a little bit? Now, I'm always a big believer of like, hey, trust your board, and if it's the best player available by far and it just happens to be a position you're pretty deep at, I still think you go with their talent. But Portland, I think, is really close to kind of taking that next leap. I thought, last year they really showed some stuff of a young team on the rise, and I think this is going to be a big year for them, and I think that's why this pick's going to be so interesting. So, a name to kind of throw out that is a really popular name right now, but I think Carter Bryant would be a really interesting fit with this Blazers team just because of the athleticism. You pair him with, someone like Scoot and Shaedon Sharpe on the perimeter. That's really fun in transition. And then Carter just kind of, matured pretty quickly this year when it came to like figuring out how to make an impact without, being the go-to bucket guy. So I think he's one of the better defensive wings in this class. So you're even talking about, putting him with Toumani Camara. I mean, Carter's just one of the most popular names right now. So I think that would be a name that it would be like an upside swing for me, but also like a really good fit with a team like the Blazers that are kind of starting to build some nastiness defensively.
For those that aren't intimately familiar with the draft, the profiles, and a guy like Carter Bryant, who traditionally would have been somebody people would have seen come through here more regularly in the Pac-12 era, but I don't like necessarily doing direct comps. But when you're talking about a guy somebody might recognize, who does Carter Bryant kind of remind you of when he comes in the league, and who could he ultimately kind of project as?
Yeah, he's a fun one. A lot of us in No Ceilings, we've been trying to kind of talk about like who he reminds us of, and it's just one of those things where this year coming into the freshman, I'd seen him the last couple of years, and he's put on a ton of weight, a ton of muscle. All the intel checks out. You hear a lot of good stuff about him when it comes to his work ethic, his character. His interviews I've heard have been fantastic. So projecting him, I think he's got a lot more offensive upside than he shows. But like OG Anunoby, who's with the Knicks right now, has been a popular name a lot of our guys have thrown around. I have weird vibes. I kind of see like a little bit of like a Shane Battier with some crazy athleticism. Just kind of starting out, which is, you're saying picking that in the 11th spot, you might be like, well, but it's like, hey, if you get a guy playing, 13 plus years in the NBA with athleticism, you'd sign up for that right away. So I also think like another Arizona Wildcat, but like he's like Andre Iguodala a little bit. He doesn't have the handles. That's what kind of needs to be worked on with his game. Iguodala is much better like playmaker and ball handler, but much better shooter than Iggy was. So kind of a little bit of vibes in there, but you think about it and you're like, hey, those are three pretty good names to have around. So it's one of those players that's the big upside swing that if you look at his stats, you'd probably be like, why didn't he play more? And I think a lot of scouts were asking that question this year, like, hey, why is he playing more? But it was a veteran roster, and he found a way to make an impact. He was playing a lot towards the end of the year.
Tyler Rucker joins us from No Ceilings. We're talking NBA draft here. I love that you mentioned that the Blazers might be in a point where they feel like one more guy can make it happen. I think we kind of all assume that 1, 2, and 3 go the way we think. Could you by chance see the Blazers make a move and jump up in this draft to see if there is that missing piece that's more in like the 6 or 7 range, or do you think they'll be happy staying at 11?
It's one of those things especially with Portland. I feel like every time we do a mock draft, myself included, I feel like you get to them and you're just kind of a headache. Like, gosh, they could go in any direction here. So I do think if you want, there's a little bit of a drop off after that 6-7 spot. Now we don't know what teams like Washington and New Orleans are. They might be willing to move back and get a bunch of future capital. And I'm a big believer of like, hey, if you have a guy you're in love with, go get your guy. So it wouldn't shock me if Portland's a team that says, hey, we're going to move up. We think this is the last piece we need at the puzzle to really have that foundation moving forward. Months ago, if you asked me about Colin Knippel, I thought it would be a dream fit for the Trailblazers, and I don't know if he's going to be there on the board still. So
he is not.
Maybe they could move up a little spot. So, but it gets really interesting. I'm also curious to see if they can maybe try to double down on maybe they try to trade out. Maybe they try to get a veteran, like they struck gold with the Denny Avdia deal. Maybe you can scan the market or find that again. So they're in a great spot because this is a really deep guard draft, but there's a run there in that lottery where there's a lot of teams that don't need a guard. So it could also, talk to some teams and be like, hey, well, if you want to come up and get your guard, give us a vet. Let us get another piece. So they're in a good spot. I know it's never fun to hear that when you're a Trailblazers fan. You're like, we're picking 11th, but they're in a good leverage opportunity, I think, with a lot of teams trying to come up, or they could try to see if they can get up themselves.
The NBA draft is always very interesting because undoubtedly somebody will go in a position where we kind of go, well, that's interesting. The one that really jumps to my mind was when Cam Johnson went, 14 picks before anybody really thought he had a chance. I know particularly the Blazers had Cam Johnson on their board, and they ended up taking Nasir Little in that draft because they're like, oh, crap, Cam Johnson's gone, and a bunch of teams had to scramble. You hear names like Cedric Coward, Rasheer Fleming's a guy who's got a lot of juice around him. Nate Clifford is a guy you and I who at Colorado State love. Who are some names that Trailblazers fans should watch, whether it's picking at 11 or let's say they like you mentioned, they move back because the Nets have 5 of the top 36 picks. Do the Blazers trade back and get 2 1s and somebody else or something along those lines? Whatever imagination. Who are some names you could see that kind of fly up a board and can kind of throw a wrench in everyone's mocks?
Yeah, it's one of those years in which I think there's a lot of those names. You ask around the league right now, and you kind of get a different answer about each player. Like some teams are like, I could see him going lottery. Some are like, probably late first. And you get those each year, but this year it just seems there's such a variance with a lot of these names. Like Danny Wolf is kind of, I keep joking, I'm saying he's the joker in the deck of the whole draft. Like, I think some teams think like, hey, he could go early because it's one of those eye of the beholder players. 7-foot big man with guard skills. Wouldn't shock me if he goes in the 20s. Wouldn't shock me if he's going, top 15, just because I think one team might look at him and be like, this is such a unique player. It could give us a fun wrinkle. I think Noah Essengate has been a popular name right now. The Blazers obviously play, Ratio Farm in the preseason, so they know about him plenty, but he's just had a great end of the year. He's kind of the upside swing. When I had asked around the league, I had a scout was like, someone's taking him top 12. They're just like, I'm convinced someone's going to swing on him. So I think he's maybe the one that could throw a little bit of a wrench to some, but I think that's where you're getting the upside swing type of players that could really climb. And then, if Portland moves back, hypothetically, I'm just a big Nate Clifford fan. I think he's one of those really high floor players that's just going to find a way to make an impact in a number of different ways. And you can play him in, a couple different, rotation variances. So Cedric Howard's also another one. That was a good shout. A lot of teams right now are like, hey, I have him here. I think I'm too low. So it's going to be really interesting. There's a lot of names that some people are thinking, hey, they're going to shock the public. The public's not ready because they're going to go much earlier than people think.
Tyler, we'll get you out on this. We'll let you have a little bit of fun. How many games can the Pacers win in the NBA Finals?
Oh, gosh. 2?
2?
Yeah, 2. I think they'll get 2. It's so funny to think about, but like when you kind of look at it, I think they might match up pretty well, both teams. It should be a fun series. I know the NBA is probably pumped about the ratings, but I think it's going to be a really fun series. It's also pretty cool because it's two teams that have, in so many ways built through the draft or tried to kind of find some pieces that, second team opportunities. So for me, I geek out on that stuff because there's a lot of teams I think that are taking a page out of teams like OKC right now. I think the Blazers are one of them. I think the Blazers are like, hey, let's keep hitting on the draft. We don't got to hit home runs. We got to just keep hitting singles and doubles and triples, and all of a sudden you're going to look up and have a really deep roster.
That is Tyler Rucker from No Ceilings. Go check out the page and see what it's all about. We thank you so much for coming on.
Hey, absolutely. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Todd.
All right, that was Tyler Rucker from No Ceilings talking about the Blazers 2025 draft pick. I think he's on to something. I think this is probably the most important draft the Blazers have had of this generation. Like, you get a guy like Shaedon, you get a guy like Scoot, you get a guy like Donovan. Like, that's your core. This, I think, is the one, can this put you over the edge? No matter what they do. Draft, trade out, trade up.
It is interesting because, we've talked about it earlier. SGA is not a top 10 pick.
Nope.
Tyrese Halliburton's not a top 10 pick. Like the J-Dub is not a top 10 pick. Like, you just look at all these guys and you're like,
Steph Curry's not a top 10 pick.
You just find these guys.
Yeah, he was. My bad.
Top 10. But
I got ahead of myself.
You had 2 Minnesota point guards go in front of him. He was the third point guard.
Yeah.
But no, he wasn't a top 5 pick.
Yeah.
Like you can find like Giannis is not a top 10 pick. Yes, you can. These are exceptions, not rules.
Right.
Like that's the whole point.
You can get a Draymond in the second round. Shane Battier is not a top 10 pick.
Like finding those guys and making that make sense. And this is why I always say luck plays such a huge factor in this stuff.
It really does.
And nobody wants to admit it because you're not the controller of your destiny. But if the luck goes your way, and let's just say they take Carter Bryant. Let's say Carter Bryant turns into like some OG Anunoby, Andre Iguodala.
I love that he said Shane Battier. I would die to have a 20-year career of a dude like that.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing is if you're picking an 11, you get a guy like we talked about the Mike Conley Greg Oden draft class. Like
Mm-hmm.
4 of the 5 guys, basically, other than Greg, are still playing.
Yeah.
Like, Al Horford still playing, Mike Conley still playing, Jeff
Durant's
Green
still
still playing,
playing.
Durant still playing,
Yep.
and you're like,
Yeah, Jeff Green.
you find guys that have 15+ year careers in the draft. No matter where you draft them, you did good.
Jeff Rust back here with you on this best of edition of Danny and Dusty. Coming up on the other side of the break, a little bit more NBA draft talk. Ace Bailey, widely believed by many to be the 3rd best prospect on the board, but is he talking his way out of that and acting his way out of that? We'll hit that one next on this best of edition of Danny and Dusty on 1080 The Fan.
Check out the Fan Merch Locker.
Welcome back in. Jeff Rust here with you on this best of edition of Danny and Dusty, the guys out there on the golf course at Langdon Farms for the 11th annual Fan Golf Classic. We're going to wrap up NBA draft talk with one more segment. Rutgers star Ace Bailey, kind of a consensus number 3 on everybody's big boards, but are he and his camp talking his way out of being drafted so high? That's all coming up right now with Danny and Dusty.
Portland Trailblazers will select 11th in Wednesday's NBA draft. We will have the latest on the intel and what the listeners of this radio program wanted there, because you guys ran a poll on Wednesday, right?
Yes.
Of who do you want in the NBA draft? Kasparas Yakashonis, Carter Bryant, Cedric Coward, or other? And we have the results of that, and how the likelihood of that happening for the hometown team, the Portland Trail Blazers. But Wednesday is shaping up to just have fireworks left and right, because we found out yesterday that Ace Bailey, whose draft stock has been falling on its own, decided to go, all right, I'll go ahead and add a little fuel to this fire, and canceled his only workout with the Philadelphia 76ers that he had scheduled. His only workout, said, nah, I'm good, and will not work out he was supposed to be doing it today in Philly.
He was going to do a kind of a walk around, meet the staff, all that kind of stuff, sit down, do interviews yesterday, and then do the workout today. Cooper Flagg did the same thing for Dallas. He went down there.
Little different.
Yeah, but he went down there. What's really interesting is the Mavericks did not bring anybody else in. And look, sometimes you do your due diligence just because, but they didn't. They basically said, we don't want Cooper to think that we're not 100% in on him. But Cooper went down there for 2 days, went out for.
I think Dallas has given basketball players a reason to have that concern.
That's why I think they probably did it, is the optics of that, of like, no, you're our guy, we'll go down this path. But Cooper went down there for a day, or down there for 2 days is what I was told, and did the thing of like, let's go wine and dine, go out for dinner. But I guess he went out on the court once, and then he went back out again to basically show everybody, no, this is what you're getting, because he's that kind of dude. The Ace Bailey stuff. So for folks though that don't know, his agent is Sharif Cooper's dad, and basically if NBA player that had a bunch of problems.
I was like, all right, I don't. That
if you're an NBA guy, just Google Sharif Cooper. And you'll kind of figure it out. It's nothing like grotesque or illegal. It's just a lot of bad decisions were made. And it'll be seen at the draft whether or not this impacts him a lot, and with regards to Ace Bailey. But everybody I've talked to, evaluators, scouts, front offices, other media members, just everyone universally agrees that his agent is gacking this up in a way that, like, this is not how you do this. And it's a little Shedeur Sanders-y. It does feel like that, but it's not. Ace does not have what I would determine as the character flaws that Shedeur had, the arrogance of it all. There's some of that, but it's mostly just maturity questions, and not in the sense of like anything toxic, but just that he's just not there. And then you compare him to the guys who are going to go in front of him in Cooper and Dillon. They're pros.
Yeah.
Like they're pros. And it's such a, like, if I was Ace's agent, I would be trying to show that he can be that, because that is the thing that just beyond the basketball, people just don't know if he's ready to be a pro. Like that's,
yeah.
They all say he's a nice, affable, joking, good times kid. Like that's, but it's emphasized hard on the kid. Whereas even though Cooper's the youngest guy in this draft, no one questions whether or not he's ready.
This is something that a lot of folks in professional sports thought NIL would help.
Yeah.
Is the professionalization of it, where you get a little coin in your pocket. You are going through knowing that you are getting ready for a professional career. This is nothing new to the one and dones, right? And maybe this is like, I can't believe I'm saying this, to the credit of guys like John Calipari, who are used to developing one and done guys, not for success in that 1 year that they are at Kentucky or now Arkansas, but developing them so they're ready to be professionals. That there are certain one and done type coaches that get you ready for professional basketball in 1 year, learning how to be a pro in that 1 year. In Rutgers, it was surprising to everybody when it was like Dylan Harper and Ace Bailey both going to Rutgers, and that readiness for the professional level. One got it, the other didn't.
Well, one of them's the son of a former NBA player. And that
Yep.
plays such a huge part in this.
Growing up in it.
But what's really interesting is as we get closer to the draft, the things behind the scenes are starting to solidify with at least mild consensus as far as probably the 8 players who are going to go in the top 8. But there's also a lot of rumblings about teams that are looking to trade up. A lot of teams are looking to trade up into that top 8. And then there's a group of teams that I think are looking to trade up into the 9 through 12 range. And whether or not those things come to fruition, I don't know, but it sounds like it's going to be busy. Now, there's times when we think, this, trade deadline was supposed to be quiet. Everybody was chilling, and then we weren't. So
Nico Harrison,
yeah.
Leroy Jenkins.
And does somebody do that? And everybody is sitting here waiting. Is Phoenix going to make the move before the draft, or like a couple hours before going into the draft? Because once that domino falls with Kevin Durant, are they going to be a team that's picking in the top 10? Because the Raptors are a team that are if I had to handicap it right now, I would say that neither Houston nor San Antonio moves for Kevin Durant.
Jeff Rust back here with you on this best of edition of Danny and Dusty. Coming up after the break. Look, we're done with Trailblazers for today now, okay? Are you happy? We're going to talk Senate Bill 110, passed by the House. It appropriates up to $800 million in a jock tax for a new MLB stadium on the South Waterfront. That is all after me with this sports update.
Now, from the George McCoy at Warren Allen Sports Desk, a Sports Center update on 1080 The Fan.
First on The Fan, late last night, ESPN Shams Charania reported the Trailblazers sending Anthony Simons and 2 second-round picks to the Celtics for Drew Holiday. Portland originally acquired Holiday from Milwaukee in the Damian Lillard trade, but he never donned a Portland uniform before being sent off to Boston. The 35-year-old owed about $67 million over the next 2 seasons, plus a $37.2 million player option for the 2027-28 season. Shams also reporting Blazers defensive stalwart Matisse Thybulle exercising his $11.5 million option for next season. And Shams again reporting the Pelicans trading C.J. McCollum, Kelly Olynyk, and a second-round pick to the Wizards for Jordan Poole, Saddiq Bey, and the number 40 overall pick on Thursday. More sports scores and stories in 30 minutes. I'm Jeff Rust from the George McCoy at Warren Allen Sports Desk. Hurt and missing work, insurance companies acting like jerks. Don't call your mom. Call George McCoy at warrenallen.com.
The Fan Merch Locker has a new black 1080 The Fan hoodie, as well as classic long and short sleeve tees. Get yours now at 1080thefan.com.
Jeff Rust back here with you. It is a best of edition of Danny and Dusty. They're out at Langdon Farms for the 11th annual Fan Golf Classic. They will be back tomorrow. For this segment, we're done with the Trailblazers for the day. We're going to talk about or revisit our conversation about Senate Bill 110, which last Tuesday was passed by the Oregon House of Representatives. It makes available up to $800 million in a jock tax available towards a new Major League Baseball stadium in Portland. So, how much closer is the city of Portland to getting a Major League ball team?
All right, little hot route here is because we got some political news that pertains to the world of sports in our backyard.
That's not the way we want this segment to start, Danny.
Yeah.
Is political news?
Yeah,
no. We have sports news.
It's sports news adjacent from the world of politics. If you've been following along with MLB to PDX for the last few years, you've seen, I think, a breath of excitement maybe starting to build up a little bit where everybody kind of thought, oh, okay, we're doing this all over again. But House Bill 110 was sent down to the state legislature. I believe it was back in April is when we got word that it was very likely going to be greenlit to be pushed on to the next process. Well, that next process has occurred, and it passed overwhelmingly. If you're wondering what House Bill 110 is, it is basically the iteration that is going to allow for the jock tax to increase from a max pool of $115 million up to $800 million. And for those that don't know, this does not just impact the Thorns, Timbers, Blazers. It's anyone who comes through. So if you're an away team and you play in Portland, when they get their pay stubs, there is a breakout there for Oregon and their jock tax. It's why playing in places like New York, Oregon, and California that have quite literally very prohibitive taxes for high earners in professional sports, that goes into this pool of $115 million that had a cap. That cap is now being lifted up to $800 million.
Now, there's big questions, and rightfully so, over whether or not that pool of money would ever get to $800 million. And this isn't coming from any taxes that you and I or anybody listening, unless you play professional sport. There's questions whether that pool of money will ever get to $800 million. Well, in this, they are saying if it doesn't get to $800 million, we're not just going to cut a check from the general fund to cover the $800 million. The owners will then have to foot the rest of the bill. So keep that in the back of your mind that this isn't coming out of anywhere else.
No,
it is. When you think of it, the bipartisan support to pass anything 46-6 in
this state
is pretty incredible. And it got support from the governor. It's going to head to the governor's desk next. And at that point, it's probably going to be signed in. I think that this is a no-brainer because if that pool in over time, it's just going to continual growth in that pool of money. And look, we're looking at, hopefully by 2029, which that sounds like it's in the distant future. That's only 4 years away. MLB is going to be announcing expansion. You want to have every single duck in a row in order for that to happen, to get financing and say, hey, we have political support, we have financial support, we are ready to go, we have land, we're ready to get this thing done and get the ball rolling immediately. This is in Major League Baseball desperately needs this to happen in advance so they don't run into stadium issues like they currently have in Sacramento with the A's, like in Tampa with the Rays, and they're going to have in a few short years with Miami with the Marlins, right?
Or they've had it in Arizona.
Always happens again and again and again. Well, this is to alleviate a lot of those pressures.
This is not the final step, but this is
not complete either.
No, this is good news though as it starts to push towards this because and I do believe in this. Public funds should not be set aside for billionaires who are going to make this money because here's the thing. It's not just the stadium that makes the money, it's the surrounding land and all the restaurants and shops and they would own that land around that generates revenue. And it does get paid back pretty damn quick. Like you went down to Atlanta, right? With dirt and that area around, even though it's out in the middle of nowhere.
Dirt and I didn't just take a mandate to Atlanta, by the way. We went down for the Oregon-Georgia game a few years ago.
But you guys went down and caught a Braves game. And that whole area around, it's 20 minutes outside Atlanta?
Yeah. It's
Give or
about
take.
There, yeah.
But that whole area was nothing, and now it's this like bustling economy around the Braves and any events that they have in that area. There's shops, there's restaurants. Like, it's a destination place to go to, of which Portland just does not have. It's the same issue that we have with the Rose Quarter.
Well, one thing that I do appreciate out of this as well is that our state's leaders are now acknowledging the importance that sports can have in revitalizing a city, in the image of a city. And I firmly believe that it can, and it does. What you just outlined right there is a great example of it.
It used to be a bit of BS.
But right now, with
It's not.
the way that Portland is viewed and the way that it is, bringing Major League Baseball to Portland would be a huge step in kind of getting the image back on the right track. And there's several other steps that you can make and that they do need to make. But this is no cost to the average taxpayer in the state of Oregon. And it does not.
And it's not an
Oregon
increasing
residents
job tax either.
Oregon residents do not, like, they're not affected by this one bit unless you play a professional sport. And you're right. It's not going to increase how much money they have to pay when they come here to play. It's just the funds that are going to be allocated towards that are going to go towards.
The cap's going up.
The cap is going up, so the pool can get bigger. How big it gets, again, they're not going to say, all right, well, we have $150 million for it, but we only got to, and then they extend it out to 800. Well, we only got to 500. We'll cut you a check for 300 mil. That's not going to happen. No. They're going to go, well, you're on the hook for that other $300 million. But it is
But it's still a half a billy that
It's
you're not going to get otherwise.
Showing that you want another professional sports team here, and we need it desperately here.
And
Selfishly, I love sports. I would love to have Major League Baseball here.
Yes.
I think it would be great. But I also think that the people that are getting upset over, well, where's the extra money going to come from? Not from you.
Yeah.
Not from me. That's okay.
And this part of it is they're now catching up to Utah. Because Utah, with the ownership groups and the business partners that they have and what Ryan Smith is doing and even organizing everything and getting everything ready, we saw how quickly they got that NHL team. They are ready to go. And if you're Portland and you're basically fighting with Utah for that expansion. And if you want it, you've got to have your ducks in a row. So now there's land. Now there's at least an allocation of funds. And there does seem to be legitimate positive momentum on the business side and on the political side, which I think might be the first time ever that both are aligned.
Here is a quote from John Calhoun, who's part of the Watchdog group, Tax Fairness of Oregon. This is from an Oregonian article. We tried to educate legislators on the fallacy of their economic premise, that is, all of the funds that would be used to pay for the stadium are free. You could make that statement about any new business coming to the state, and economists who are independent economists almost universally say that's a fallacy.
Jeff Rust back here with you on this best of edition of Danny and Dusty. We got one more segment to go, and I'm going to be selfish as heck about it. It's from about 2 weeks ago when I was in the one seat hosting with Danny my Mount Rushmore of films either shot in or taking place in Oregon. That's coming up next on a best of edition of Danny and Dusty on 1080 The Fan.
Hello, sports.
Jeff Rust back here with you on this best of edition of Danny and Dusty. We are wrapping it up for today, but I selfishly now for our last segment, we're going to go back a couple of weeks to when I sat in the one chair hosting with Dusty or with Danny. In the segment we did what I called my Mount Rushmore of films either shot in or taking place in Oregon. A while back, for some reason, I guess unprovoked, decided to rank my top 5 cereal choices. 4 of the 5, great, whatever, not a big topic of debate. But my number 3, which drove these two crazy and sparked quite the backlash. My number 3 is grape nuts. But anyway, so that has inspired this new segment, or while I'm on this side of the mic anyway. And instead of ranking them 1 through 5, we're going to call this my Mount Rushmore. So we're going to have my top 4 in no particular order of Oregon movies, either taking place in or shot in Oregon. So I'm going to start out with look, and we just they just had their 40th anniversary celebration in Astoria this past weekend. I don't know how you don't go with the Goonies.
Indeed. And did you see who was out there this weekend?
Corey Feldman.
He was.
Taking selfies on the porch.
Even wearing the same outfit.
Yes. He had the members only jacket.
And he had, what's funny is Casey Holdahl retweeted that he was going to be out there, and he had a shirt on. It's a Purple Rain Prince t-shirt.
I thought I saw the top of that.
I have that exact same shirt.
Nice.
We did Eras Nights throughout a Blazer season. There was 70s night, 80s night, 90s night.
Mm-hmm.
And NBC got me and Joe and Shane some shirts to wear that night.
Uh-huh.
The 80s night, I wore that Purple Rain shirt on the show, and I was like, I kept that one because I'm like, this is actually kind of a dope shirt.
Absolutely.
It's actually kind of funny to see like those shirts, like the old like throwback album covers have become like popular.
You see them popping up at Target now too.
Oh yeah, they're everywhere. But like, I just thought it was funny. I was like, oh yeah, no, I have that exact same shirt. I saw Rihanna wearing it, the exact same shirt somewhere else too, and I was like, me and Rihanna like this. Same fashion sentiment. So I was like,
who'd have thunk it?
Who'd have thunk it? Yeah, no, it's it's like I always talk about my hip surgeries. I have the same issue as Bo Jackson. Me and Bo Jackson, thick as thieves.
Exactly.
Same level of athlete.
One of us. Another one. My second movie on there. This one also should probably come as no surprise. Animal House.
Yeah,
you can't get a whole lot more classic than
No.
Animal House.
No.
You got your John Belushi, you got your Kevin, super young, tiny baby Kevin Bacon in there. Donald Sutherland as the pot smoking professor. And, the University of Oregon has fully bought in it. On it, and so they do the shout leading into the fourth quarter at football games. It's a whole deal, man. You had Otis Day and the Knights, they weren't actually, if I remember correctly, they were not actually a band until basically that movie, and that's what kind of propelled them a little bit. But yeah, Animal House.
What else?
Flounder, Otter.
I know you. There's one other one on here that has to be on here.
Okay. Let's see here.
Let's see where we go.
Well, my next one, this isn't the one you're thinking of, but I'm going to go with The Shining.
No, that is.
Oh, is it?
That is.
Yes.
Yeah. That I think the 3 that you just named are like the 3, like the 4th one is where it's going to get interesting but the 3, it's those 3.
Yeah.
Animal House, The Goonies, The Shining. It's a lot like, hey, Kevin Love and Klay Thompson grew up playing baseball together. They're from Oregon.
Right.
Jerome Bettis was from Detroit. Like, The Shining was, it's Timberline Lodge.
Yes.
Like, it's.
And you have Jack Nicholson in his peak craziness too, just over the top, and everything you love about Jack.
No, 100%
that movie. You got your Shelley Duvall, the
creepy twins.
The creepy twins. Oh my god. Red Rum, exactly. My 4th one on this Mount Rushmore. Kindergarten Cop.
Okay.
Kindergarten Cop.
That's definitely like on the short list.
Yes.
Astoria, right?
Yes. Yeah. Astoria. Yes. There's a couple reasons why that one makes a Mount Rushmore for me. One of them is for some reason, one of the lines I will never get out of my head from that movie is when he's, in with the class or whatever, and he says he's got a headache, and then maybe it's a tumor. It's not a tumor. That, and then of course the little kid too that stands up and says, "Boys have a penis, girls have a vagina." Yeah, those are the 2 of the things that stand out to me. And then also
Schwarzenegger's best work.
Yes, right, exactly. Outside of Predator and
no, come on, that's where he was really acting. That what's the Christmas movie where he has to get the toy?
Jingle All the Way.
Jingle All the Way with Sinbad.
Yeah,
Sinbad. I remember there was a line This is when you had to go up to the booth to buy tickets.
Mm-hmm.
Like holiday movies were a big deal, and you're talking about like Sinbad and Schwarzenegger when like they were mega stars
Absolutely.
in Hollywood. And
Yeah.
like I remember there being a line for Jingle All the Way
Mm-hmm.
because like that I believe that came out the same time as like the Furby or Elmo.
be, yeah.
It's
It
one,
was-
one of those like mega toys that you could not get anywhere.
The writer based it on his failed attempt to buy a Mighty Morphin Power Rangers toy.
That's what it
during,
was, yeah.
during one of the rushes.
There we
and
go.
actually, I got to meet Sinbad one time. I think he was here doing stand-up about a decade ago, and he said that part, the mailman, was originally written for Wesley Snipes. So pretty cool.
Oh, that's cool,
Just
yeah.
kind of rando fact about that movie.
And the other thing about Kindergarten Cop for me is I felt kind of a kinship as a kid watching this when he and his cop partner are on the drive towards the coast and she's getting sick and they you see the Sunset Highway sign that they drive past, but when she gets out to go throw up, it's at that little Hamlet quick stop right at the corner of Highway 53 and 26 where we usually turn off to go head towards Manzanita. So for me that was like I felt like Spicoli basically at
There
that
you go.
point going, hey, I know that guy. But yeah, so that's why Kindergarten Cop is the fourth one on my Mount Rushmore.
I'm not picking any scabs here. I think you hit the four that the text line is pretty much.
I do have some honorable mentions too.
What do you got for honorable mention?
One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Okay, that was the one that I was like, where do you go with four? Because it was going to be like Kindergarten Cop or that.
I'm interested to see how many people know, because there's a lot.
Yeah.
Now we're talking whole movie, a scene. What are the parameters?
Well, right, yeah. Well, that's what
Credit given to Oregon.
It was
basically.
kind of like I said, it was either set in or shot.
Yeah.
In at least even partially. One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. 'Cause you got some little young Danny DeVito in there. Christopher Lloyd also. And then of course Nurse Ratched. She was just a horrible human being in that movie. Stand By Me on the honorable mention.
There you go.
Yep. Because classic,
Let's hit it, buddy.
Yeah,
Corey
exactly.
Feldman also in that one.
Yep. Jerry O'Connell, River
Phoenix,
Phoenix.
yep.
Short Circuit.
Steve Guttenberg.
Oh, was that filmed here?
Astoria.
Astoria.
Oh, that's right.
Astoria. Yeah.
It's weird. I always have Short Circuit 2 in my head because of Los Locos.
Yes, Los
because they
Locos.
they kick your balls into outer space.
Yes.
But I for whatever reason, J5 with the mohawk sits in my head a lot more.
Right.
Than
And
J5 is alive.
I couldn't in good conscience put Short Circuit on the Mount Rushmore strictly because of Fisher Stevens playing an Indian guy.
Playing brownface.
Yeah.
Oh. He's been popping up in my TikTok algorithm because somehow, do you know the TV show Blacklist with Spader?
Yes.
He's a villain in that.
Gotcha.
And he plays a really good villain, but like I've just seen him pop up in my TikTok algorithm for whatever reason. I'm like, oh, that's right. He did do that. I forgot about that. And
I'm standing here beside myself.
yeah, it's like, oof.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
He does regret doing that
Yes.
because it was a different time.
It was a different time. Yes.
There's one on here that probably won't be on anybody's list, but was like such a formative, like young family movie. I'm going to say one name. I want to see if you get the movie. Michael J. Fox.
In Oregon?
Teen Wolf?
You don't ever see him.
Boy, I don't know.
Homeward Bound.
Oh, okay.
What
Yep.
does he have to do with that one? Because I knew Homeward Bound was in Oregon. I didn't know he was.
He's the voice of one of the dogs.
Because I
the golden retriever.
No. He's the golden retriever's the old guy.
Oh, he's the one with the eye.
He's the one that gets hit with a porcupine.
Yeah, Homeward Bound, at least part of it filmed around Joseph, Oregon, over there near the
Pretty much
Wallowas.
all of the outdoor stuff that they do, because
Yeah.
I think they end up in San Francisco, but all of the outdoor stuff is in Oregon.
Actually, I just read San Francisco shots are shot in Oregon. So
are
they
they
used
really?
Portland as a fake San Francisco in that
God.
movie. All in
Interesting.
Oregon, baby.
I also had, now this one, some of you might get a little bit of a groan from it, but it always had a soft spot in my heart. But Overboard, Kurt Russell, Goldie Hawn.
That's one of my favorites.
Yeah.
People forget about that one.
Yeah, those two, to me, they're a great pair. They play well off each other, mainly, a lot of it because,
Also, it's a
they were
great
together
movie
for
about
decades.
kidnapping.
Yes, that too.
And Overboard was actually remade, so it was good enough to be considered like.
Did you see the remake?
It was crap, I'm sure.
Hot garbage.
I mean, most are.
It was awful.
I will say, when we're talking about not quite just remakes. I was watching. I'm going to Florida in the winter with the family. We're going to go do Universal Studios and all that kind of stuff with the fam, and we're getting the kids up to date on the Harry Potter movies because they're 8 and 10. They're just now watching the last couple of Harry Potter movies, and then How to Train Your Dragon.
There we go.
Now they remade the live action How to Train Your Dragon. Pretty much every single one of the live action remakes have all sucked and blown at the same time. They have been horrendous. Yeah. The Lion King one still scares the crap out of me. It's like, what the hell's going on here?
I will say we saw Lilo and Stitch last weekend or the weekend before.
I was just going to say Lilo and Stitch and How to Train Your Dragon are getting like rave reviews, and it's like, oh, you mean you stopped changing the thing that made the animation great, and you just went like, we're going to do it like line for line, bar for bar of the animation.
Well, sorry to cut off that segment early, but as I figured, I'm up against it. I went too long. I'm going to head out of here and go down to Langdon Farms, join the boys down there, fully expecting to find Danny face down in a bunker with an empty bottle of tequila in his hand. We're going to hand it off to Ryan Buckley here. He's got a best of primetime for you for the next 4 hours. But until then, we've got the NBA draft tomorrow. The Blazers currently slated to select number 11 on the board. Do they make the pick? Do they trade back? Do they trade up? Do they trade out of the NBA draft altogether? We'll find that out tomorrow on a Wrasslin' Wednesday edition of Danny and Dusty. And if Dusty's not here, nobody's told me, they don't tell me anything. So we will see you tomorrow right back here on The Fan from noon to 3. Ciao, Belly. Sucking on a chili dog.
Hey, it's Zook. Spring is here, longer days, warmer weather, so don't wait until you're sweating buckets to find out that your AC needs help. I love the high-efficiency train system A&E Plumbing, Heating, and Air installed at my house, and now's the time to book my checkup, and you should do the same. A&E is locally owned with a lifetime workmanship guarantee. That's right. If they don't do it right, they fix it for free forever. A&E is the real deal. Call A&E or visit aeheatingandcooling.com today. Your local independent train dealer. It's hard to stop a train. CCB number 203004.
For more than 75 years, University of Maryland Global Campus has given you the opportunity to build your next success. Choose from more than 135 degree and certificate programs in career-relevant fields like business, healthcare, data analytics, cybersecurity, and more. Plus, we offer 100% online and hybrid courses, personalized advising, and lifetime career services. Learn more at umgc.edu. Certified to operate in Virginia by Chev.
Some people just know they could save hundreds on car insurance by checking Allstate first. Like to check the GPS directions first, before driving to the mall.
Turn right at the light. In 1,000 miles, you will reach Montreal.
Not Montreal, the mall.
Recalculating. 6,000 miles to Nepal.
No, the mall.
Checking first is smart.
Recalculating.
So check Allstate first for a quote that could save you hundreds. You're in good hands with Allstate.
Savings vary. Subject to terms, conditions, and availability. Allstate Fire and Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates, Northbrook, Illinois.
Hey, you ever work with Home Z? We had them do our roof and siding. Smoothest project I've ever dealt with.
Home Z did our interior painting and new floors. I loved how detailed everything was. Clear, itemized estimates, no guessing.
Same. I used Home Z's online calculator and got an estimate in seconds. No pressure, just straight info.
And the team, total pros. Explained everything without the usual sales talk.
It's how home improvement should be. Home improvement should be easy, so make it easy. Call HomeZ. Visit HomeZ.com. That's HOMZE.com. CCB number 239804.
You ever try fixing your car and realize you're missing that one part? Yeah, been there. That's why eBay's my go-to. They've got millions of parts, guaranteed to fit. I'm talking brake pads for when yours have seen one too many miles of stop and go. Oil filters, because you don't mess around with your engine care. Even got this cold air intake on my watch list. I might just go for it. To keep the ride cool and your DIY streak hot. Find all the parts you need at prices you'll love. Guaranteed to fit every time. eBay. Things people love. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply.
Why'd I go to the doctor? One day at the firehouse, I was so lightheaded I could barely stand. Even my crew noticed. Getting checked out was the right call. Turns out I have atrial fibrillation, which increases the risk of stroke about 5 times.
Symptoms like irregular heartbeat, heart racing, chest pain, shortness of breath, fatigue, or lightheadedness can come and go. But if it's AFib, the risk of stroke remains. If you have symptoms, contact a doctor.
I'm so glad I did.
Visit NoTimeToWait.com. Sponsored by Bristol-Myers Squibb and Pfizer.
Your home for year-round NFL coverage is KFXX KWJJ HD2 Portland.
They are who we thought they were.
1080 The Fan, an Odyssey sports station. Now, from the George McCoy at Warren Allen Sports Desk, a Sports Center update on 1080 The Fan.
Ryan Buckley with this SportsCenter update. First on the Fan, lots of Blazers news today on the eve of the 2025 NBA Draft. On Monday night, the Blazers traded Anthony Simons to the Boston Celtics in return for Drew Holiday. The Blazers also sending a pair of second-round picks to Boston in the deal. Simons was the last player on Portland's roster from the Neil Olshey era. Holiday has 3 years and $110 million left on his current deal. Meanwhile, the Blazers' small forward Matisse Thybulle has picked up his $11.5 million player option for the upcoming season. Down in the Big Easy, the Pelicans are sending former Blazers C.J. McCollum as well as Kelly Olynyk and a future second-round pick to the Washington Wizards in exchange for Jordan Poole, Saddiq Bey, and the 40th overall pick in tomorrow night's draft. On the gridiron, another recruit gets away from Dan Lanning and the Ducks as QB prospect Ryder Lyons has committed to BYU over the U of O. And the Mariners looking for another win in Minneapolis tonight as Luis Castillo takes the hill for the M's at Target Field. Chris Paddock is on the bump for the Twins. Cal Raleigh now sitting on 32 homers after hitting 5 dingers in the last 4 games. He is 1 for 6 lifetime against Paddock. That one hit, though, was a round tripper. First pitch tonight from Minnesota at 4:40. More sports scores and stories in 30 minutes. Ryan Buckley at the George McCoy at Warren Allen Sports Desk. Hurt and missing work. Insurance companies acting like jerks. Don't call your mom. Call George McCoy at warrenallen.com.
It's The Fan on FM. Go to 99.5 FM HD2 and enjoy high def 1080 The Fan.
If you can find the time to explore the mind of a stripper, then you can find the time to spend with your actual family.
Prime Time with Isaac and Suk.
Damn! What they on? All steroids and no carbs? Them some thick-ass kids.
This is Prime Time.
We're not like you. We're grown-ups.
Your source for the best in local, regional, and national sports.
Oh, my goodness!
Here are Isaac Ropp and Jason Sakanik with Prime Time on 1080 The Fan.
Hey, what it do? Ahoy. No, it's not Ropp. No, it's not Suk. It is I, your fearless producer, Ryan Buckley. The boys out at the 11th annual Fan Golf Classic with the rest of the on-air staff today. A great time being had by all. There's plenty of clips up over on social media at 1080 The Fan. But you are getting a best-of edition of Isaac and Suk today. I've procured some of my favorite segments from the last month or so. And I'm going to start with these guys coming in hot. This was a first segment which for me are often my favorite segments of the day when there's not really anything planned and we're shooting from the hip. And the boys were coming in hot.
Hey, what it do?
Ahoy!
What's up?
Dude, we're coming in hot right now.
Good Tuesday. Yeah, we are because for some reason.
That was the most random.
Yes.
Well, with
it's
energy.
not random. Here's the thing.
It's random.
No, it's not. He's planting seeds right before we turn on the mic because he knows we can be had right before we turn on the microphone.
It is true. We are easily persuaded. We're like
we're like squirrels.
We're like a young Motown singer. You can pretty much convince us to do just about anything that you want.
Well, that has nothing to do with me. You guys are derailed easily on your own.
Wow. Okay, Buckley off the air right before we turn on the mics. Yeah. Leave it to him. He's like, Dustin May sucks. We're going Cleveland Dodgers over right out of the gate. 3:10 first pitch. Right before we said what it do.
Yeah,
well, you
Dodgers,
already knew that part.
Guardians.
That's scripted. You're good with that.
Yeah, so it's like, now I'm like, well,
do we have to lay a sawbuck down on the Dodgers Guardians?
Well, that seems like a terrible idea.
Yeah, no, I don't tail Buckley.
No, that's a good idea.
But I think it's awesome that he's already betting sports tonight.
Well, I was perplexed already because in my mind, not that I was going to lead with this, but Buckley got me twice because he had the Kirk Cousins didn't show up and for reasons that are unknown. What?
Well, they didn't. Well,
they didn't say
it wasn't excused. He's not holding out for more money.
Well, of course,
So what? Are you sitting out because you want to be the starter? Like what is that?
Yes.
Well, reasons that weren't made clear.
or were you confused by that, or was it with the Falcons?
There's not an explanation for why he missed. He just didn't want to be there.
Really? So that's like saying if you've
there's holding out, but wouldn't you still show up even if you're not going to participate?
If your wife's a real see you next Tuesday. And she tells you that she doesn't want you in your house anymore, and then the guy doesn't come home and he's at the bar. Is there really? We can't figure out why he didn't come home, Bob. I don't know. It's a mystery to everybody. We can't figure it out. But
he hasn't made a trade demand public. He hasn't said that I'm not going to be there. So I guess it being unexplained, even if we can connect the dots.
That's the one that confused me. I was like, really? We can't figure that one out, can we?
Minerals, vitamins.
Whoa.
I hate to tell you that, but that doesn't exactly take Nicolas Cage to figure that Jet Age secret out. I think we can figure that one out on our own. Kurt doesn't want to be there.
Yeah, I think what Soup
What are
is
you gonna
saying
do?
is it's understood.
Yes. Some things are just understood.
Well, we will adjust and move the drill.
I was thrown by that. So when you said that, my first thought was, wait, are the Falcons confused? Did the Falcons get confused on that, or was that a Ryan Buckley
It
confused?
was probably miswritten. The story that I read was that
insane.
it was essentially that Raheem Morris was caught off guard and did not have an explanation for it. Thought he was going to be there. He wasn't.
Something tells me that Mr. Morris has a real good idea why Kirkers isn't there.
But he apparently, in the story, which I read,
yes.
offensive coordinator Zach Robinson, or quarterbacks coach Zach Robinson, said that he's been around this offseason. He's seen him plenty. So,
Tell you what, I'm not sure which is least shocking, the Joey Bosa injured already, or Kirk Cousins not showing up to, quote, voluntary activities. Take your pick.
Yeah, I mean, who cares about voluntary OTAs?
who
really?
cares about Kirk Cousins?
You like that?
Steelers.
You like that?
Steelers might care about Kirk.
Yeah, I care about Kirk. He's the only.
He sucks now.
Outside of Rodgers, he's the only decent quarterback still out there.
Yes.
Right? Like, so
There
he
is
matters.
two viable options at quarterback that are currently not slated. Well, one's not on a team and one won't be on a team. So, yeah, it matters.
But voluntary OTA, I mean, come on.
Come on.
It's that time of year.
Hey, you going to show up? I enjoy, too, that the players don't even let people know. How about you figure out whether or not I'm going to...
And that was the intended significance here.
But don't tell me. That way we'll both be equally surprised when I don't show. Yeah, come on. OTAs. That's not a thing. That's a voluntary activity.
But the coach saying, "Oh yeah, we knew he wasn't going to be here," is a thing too.
Yeah, James Cook wasn't there too, so I wonder if we can figure that one out as well. But
he has said it's for money.
What is that about?
Sports. Most of the time, someone doesn't show up. It's for one
Money.
reason. And that
But
would
he
be-
let everyone know it was money.
I'm
Kirk
holding
didn't say
out.
anything to anyone.
I won't be here tomorrow, and it will be understood why I'm not here.
Everyone knows.
A lot will be understood.
Everyone knows.
People are like, well, everyone would think I'm sick, but I'm not. I'm holding out for more money.
But don't you have a contract coming up?
I think so. Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah, that's right.
True story. Well, something
September.
like that.
We think.
Our anniversary, our anniversary is the same anniversary as my wife and I's anniversary.
Yes, it
you
is.
knew that, right?
Yes, I did.
September 25th.
Yes.
So that's when we signed
Well,
on the dotted lines.
I think you're in the last of your year, and last time I checked, that Cook guy also in the last of his contract.
Well,
So
if you don't see me in here one day,
are you making 5.2 along with
No.
with James Cook?
Not quite.
Not quite. And that's insulting to him. He's like,